Right, I'm back. I think I've got it still running. I'll just leave it open now on this laptop. We're all good. I want to ask you about that actually. How does the... Is it like something you have to subscribe to, this SDK timing thing? Yeah, right. I'm thinking it might be handy to have it on when I'm racing, that's all, but... Oh, okay. It's not that I wasn't that bothered about it. Alright. Yeah. Okay. Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, because when the time runs down to 0, that just cuts you off, doesn't it? So, we go live at the start of quali, do we? Is that when quali starts? The trouble with doing interviews during quali is that people aren't going to want to talk if they're on hot laps, especially around Daytona, because they're going to be that busy communicating with each other for the tow, aren't they? Welcome everyone to the PDC Racing League. It's the penultimate night of racing in what has been a thrilling season, and I'm really looking forward to this because we are at the World Centre of Racing, the Daytona International Speedway, for I believe the first time in PDC racing history. And quite frankly, I'm amazed it's taken us this long to get here because this is the perfect circuit for racing in the Skip Barber Formula 2000 cars. And I think we're in for a trio of really hotly contested races tonight. My name's Andy McEwen, delighted to be here talking you through all of the action as usual. And action there will be plenty of, I think. We've had a really action-packed 9 races already in this 15-race season. And with just 2 race nights still to go, it is all to play for at the top of both the Division 1 and the Division 2 Drivers' Championships, with the Teams' Championship developing into a pretty interesting contest as well. So lots to keep an eye on over the course of the night. A slightly different format as well for the 3 races tonight, which I'll get into in a moment or two. But for now, we are heading into the qualifying session that will decide the grid for the first race of the night. It's also worth some valuable championship points, and boy, did the championship points have a shake-up a week ago. If you didn't join us last Thursday night, you missed 3 cracking races, as usual. We were on the other side of America, on the West Coast, and the Laguna Seca Raceway for 3 races, the first of which was won by Freddie Hewitt, which was his second victory of the season, before Reece Saunders, who's really come on strong in the last couple of rounds, or in fairness, has been on the pace since the start, but he's really started getting some good results in the last couple of rounds. He had a win at Alton Park, followed by a second place, and then had 2 race victories at Laguna Seca last week. So Reece Saunders has moved up now into second place in the Division 1 Championship. Chris Knox, meanwhile, the championship leader, who was never off the podium at Alton Park at the second round of the season, well, he only made the podium once a week ago at Laguna Seca. He was second in the first race, but then he was well down the order in races 2 and 3, just didn't seem to click with the track last time. And so Chris Knox, who you can see there in the number 1 car, will be desperate to try and bounce back from that. It was the first time that he hasn't won a race at any point this season. He won 2 at Okayama, 1 at Alton Park. That was the first round where he didn't win a race all night. And as a result, he's seen his championship lead not evaporate completely, but certainly shrink. He arrives here at Daytona with 6 races to go in the season, 27 points ahead of Reece Saunders, who is second, and Reece is only 3 points now ahead of Freddie Hewitt. So Chris Knox and Freddie Hewitt sandwiching Reece Saunders, who's looking for his first PDC Racing League title. Then there's a bit of a gap back to Dan Blake, who is 4th, 73 points off the top. Not an insurmountable margin, but he's certainly further back than he'd like to be. Dan Blake, double former champion, remember, hasn't been on the podium since the first night of racing at Okayama, where he had 3 third places, but since then has a best finish of 4th, which was in the most recent race at Laguna Seca. And he's only 7 points actually ahead of his teammate Ryan Mikulev, who is 5th in the championship, Michael Seal and Steve Hefford, 6th and 7th, also within 100 points of the championship leader. Now that's just Division 1. Division 2 was even more dramatic. By rights, Jake Conway should probably be leading the Division 2 Championship arriving here at Daytona, or certainly should be pretty close to it. But Jake Conway, who we see here in the number 21 PDC racing car, was jinxed, I'm convinced of it, at Laguna Seca. In all 3 races, he was a contender for a race win, and in 2 of those 3 races had contact with cars that were either a lap down or had been in the pit lane and were trying to recover through the field. All of it very avoidable, and as a result, Jake ends up further away from the championship lead arriving here at Daytona than he did arriving at Laguna Seca a week ago, especially because Ian Court, who was leading the championship going into the previous round, got himself 2 race victories in races 2 and 3. It means that Ian Court, after winning 4 of the 9 races so far this season, arrives at the Daytona road course on 249 points, which is 48 points ahead of Jake Conway. Martina Ward is 3rd, still looking for her first win in Division 2, but she has been on the podium 3 times in the last 6 races. Martina is 72 points off the top, just 4 points ahead of Alex Hall, who had a really good night, despite not actually making it onto the class podium. Alex was inside the top 5 in all 3 races at Laguna, and so moves into 4th place in the championship, 4 points behind Martina Ward, and just 2 ahead of Adam Gale, with Matt Ragsdale and Kevin McGlone not that far behind. In the team Teams Championship, we also saw a bit of a shake-up. It was a good start to the night for the Fastar Esports White team, but things rather went downhill from them for them in races 2 and 3. Freddie Hewitt is one of the leading lights within that team, Chris Knox the other, and despite scoring more points than any other team in race 1, in races 2 and 3, they really suffered. It was the Motorsport on Tour team that actually had the best night at Laguna Seca. A disastrous first race where they only scored 17 points between them, but then 61 points scored in both races 2 and 3. I mean, the Motorsport on Tour moving to second in the Teams Championship, 39 points off the top, with Year 1 third and Fastar Esports in 4th position. So there we go. That's the recap from a week ago. It's taken me over 5 minutes to get through it because there was just so much that went on at Laguna Seca. The main headline, though, was that Chris Knox was off the pace. He admitted to me during the night that he was definitely down on practice, but that's not really all that strange. Chris Knox doesn't often get the chance to put in as much practice as some of the other drivers do, but for whatever reason at Laguna Seca that really seemed to bite him, and so he arrives at Daytona now needing to try and stem the flow. Reece Saunders was able to take so many points out of him last time at Laguna Seca, and of course Reece was on the pace right from the start of the year, but had a penalty in the first race, some collisions in the second and third races at Okayama. Had it not been for that disappointing first night, he probably would be ahead of Chris Knox on points by now. So Chris knows that he's fairly fortunate to have kept this man, the Year 1 racing driver, behind him for so long. Is he going to be able to do so again by the end of the night? Well, qualifying is well underway now. We're into the 6th minute of qualifying. And as you can see, we are at the Daytona Motor Speedway, the road course in use. But the eagle-eyed among you may have realised this isn't quite how the Daytona International Speedway looks at the moment, because we've actually travelled back in time by about 12 or 13 years. This is the legacy Daytona road course, basically pre-repaved. So the banking and road course were all repaved back in the end of 2010. To become a very smooth and fast and grippy circuit. Well, before that, it was bumpy, it was abrasive, it was slippery, and in my personal opinion, it was better all round. And that is the version of the track that we're racing on, because on the iRacing platform that we use for the PDC Racing League, this is one of the free tracks. It's one of the tracks that come when you sign up to iRacing free of charge. And so to try and keep the costs down for the competitors, we try and stick to free tracks. The Skip Barber is not a free car, but it's a lot of fun, as I've been finding out this week. And the combination of the high-speed banked part of the circuit in particular, and the fact that these cars really draft well, the slipstream is so powerful in these cars, I think it's going to produce some good racing and a few spills along the way, I'm sure. I think that was Dan Blake. Yes, it was. Having, I'm afraid, a very Dan Blake-like moment, given the way his season's gone so far. He has been in the wars as the double former champion. He was taken out in someone else's accident, in fairness, in the first race at Laguna Seca a week ago. Scored only 4 points out of the first race. He did rally back to a couple of top 6 finishes later on in the night, but yeah, definitely been a season to forget for Dan, who looks at the moment relatively unlikely to take another championship crown. This man is not in championship contention, but has certainly been snatching some of the headlines recently. Ben Constanduras has been showing some real turns of pace this season. His best scoring night was the first one at Okayama, but he's arguably been quicker at both Alton and Laguna Seca. Just seems to find himself in some of those, one too many really, of those midfield collisions and first lap skirmishes, and if he can avoid that here tonight, he's definitely not a bad shout to steal himself a couple of good results and maybe get himself onto the podium. He's third fastest in this qualifying session at the moment, with Freddie Hewitt leading the way, Chris Knox second. I think we're going to see a lot of teamwork here in this qualifying session because of the nature of that slipstream that I mentioned. You can see there Ben Constanduras being overtaken by a rather laggy number 88 car around the outside. 88 being, there isn't an 88, interestingly. Oh, yes, Morgan Short. The reason I didn't recognise that car is because it's new. Morgan Short, we welcome to the PDC Racing League. He's done a bit of sim racing in the recent past. He's got a rather well-known father, Martin Short, who was a long-time GT racer, and Morgan now starting his own motorsport career. and we're really grateful to have him on board. You might just need to give that Ethernet cable a bit of a wiggle, make sure it's secured properly into the back of his PC, but hopefully that won't become an ongoing issue. The point I was about to make is we saw the way he was able to draft up behind Ben Constanduris, and then Ben just drafted straight back past him again on the next section of the banking. It's so easy to get in that draft and simply drive on past the cars around you. That's why we're going to see teammates really working together, I think, in this qualifying session and possibly in the 3 races later on. Freddie Hewitt certainly working well in this session. He is fastest at the moment. There is the man who is 3rd place in the championship. Those 2 wins that he's had so far this season, one coming at Alton Park, one coming in the first race at Laguna Seca last week. And he, like Rhys Saunders, definitely ate into that advantage that Chris Knox had in the championship. Can Hewitt now extend his advantage in this qualifying session with this, his 3rd flying lap? Doesn't look as though he will. No, Freddie Hewitt with a 2 minutes 11.11. Is still the fastest man in the session, throws the car at the first corner and really tries to carry the mid-corner speed. 2nd place is this man, Rhys Saunders then, so the 3rd and 2nd place drivers in the championship respectively would at the moment line up on the front row of the grid with the championship leader Chris Knox in 3rd, Ben Constanduris is 4th, Ryan Micallef is 5th, and Jake Conway, who's just pitted, is 6th and fastest of the Division 2 drivers, and it's Michael Seal and this man, Gavin Johnson, in the number 9 PDC racing car, currently 8th, as you can see down the left-hand side of the screen, with Adam Gale and Ben Best rounding out the top 10 at the moment. Dark blue numbers are the Division 1 drivers, the light blue are the Division 2s, and the tyre smoke is someone locking up in front of us. That might have been Peter Smith, who I think just ran wide, going off into the hairpin at the far end of the circuit there, but thankfully no real issue there for Gavin Johnson, who negotiates the drama and works his way once again onto the banking. Speed really starts to build through here, and this is going to be the scene, I think, of an awful lot of action in the races later on. The format change that I mentioned, by the way, for tonight, there are just a couple of changes. The PDC Racing League, they like to do this to us, just when we think we've got our head around the way that the race nights are going to work. They try to just throw something else in to change the format a little bit, and we're going to try and have the 3 races as usual, but with a smaller break in between the races, basically almost mirroring the kind of format we see in things like the British Touring Car Championship, where qualifying sets the grid for the first race. The race 2 grid is then based off the finishing positions in race 1, and the 3rd race will see a reverse grid, a partially reversed grid. Anywhere between the 6th place and 14th place finishers from race 2 could be reversed to form the grid for race 3, and they're doing all of this within a single session on iRacing, so there's none of this changing of servers between races. We should be able to go straight from qualifying into race 1, straight from race 2 into race 1 into race 2, and then we'll have a bit of a break between races 2 and 3 so that we can grab some of the interviews. It means we're going to do things slightly differently from a broadcast perspective, as Gavin Johnson does things slightly differently through the first corner. That wasn't the fastest run through turns 1 and 2 that I've ever seen, but good job to save it nonetheless. Yeah, it means we'll not probably have time to do any interviews after race 1, so we'll grab all of our race 1 podium finishers after race 2, and we'll have a bit of a mid-session interview where mid-session interlude where we get to interview, that's easy for me to say, some of the drivers that have done well so far. Whilst I've been wittering on about the format, I don't think much has changed at the front. It's still Hewitt, Saunders and Knox, same gaps between them for now. Ben Constanduris still in 4th, but we're seeing here these big groups of drivers all trying to slipstream from each other. Morgan Short and Ben Constanduris are back together, and they've been joined now by the number 42 of Carl Jacquelet, who's a little bit further down the timing sheets than you'd expect, perhaps, languishing as he is towards the very bottom, actually. Carl Jacquelet 23rd in the session right now. And has spun. As I took my eyes away from him to look at the timing screen, Carl Jacquelet in the Year 1 TV car has gone around through the bus stop. Very, very easy to do that at the bus stop chicane, where the speed on the entry to that corner can so easily catch you out. So you've got to really get the entry speed right and then try and accelerate through it. If you carry all the speed in the world into the chicane, you'll do exactly what Carl Jacquelet just did and lose control. So Jacquelet then unfortunately has that lap scuppered, and it probably won't have helped his speed starting the next lap either. Steve Hefford there puts in an improvement, personal best time of a 2 minutes 13.501, only good enough for 19th 19th place at the moment. But we have got a pretty competitive session here, although the top three have a bit of a gap over the rest at the moment. Speaking of the top three, this is Chris Knox at the back of the top three at the moment. And interestingly, that's Freddie Hewitt drafting with him. So Freddie Hewitt and Chris Knox both running out of the Fast R stable, but in different branches of the Fast R team. And it's Hewitt that uses the slipstream nicely to actually, ironically, pull further ahead of Chris Knox in the times. A 2 minutes 11.01. So he found another tenth of a second there, did Freddie Hewitt. He's now nearly 7/10 clear of Rhys Saunders in second and Chris Knox third. Alex Hall leaving the pit lane. And where is Alex Hall got himself to in the times? He's right at the bottom of the timing sheets. Well, pretty much 27th of 28 drivers. And Alex, as I said earlier on, is now 4th place in the Division 2 Drivers' Championship. So could do with a good night tonight to try and cement himself as a championship contender. He's 76 points off Ian Court. But as we saw last week from Chris Knox and from Jake Conway in Division 2, it's quite easy to have a bad night and lose a lot of points as the championship leader. That run of good fortune only tends to last so long. So if people like Alex Hall and Martina Ward and Adam Gale and even Matt Ragsdale can keep the pressure on Ian Court in the Division 2 rankings, they could still manage to scrape the championship away. And indeed, Court is only 4th fastest at the moment in Division 2, 16th place. 5th fastest, in fact. Jake Conway is quickest, Ben Best is second, then Matt Payne, Adam Gale, and then Ian Court ahead of Martina Ward. Matt Ragsdale is a little bit further back than that, though, 23rd fastest at the moment. Slipstream, I think, is playing a big part here, though, because drivers that normally would be right on the pace in qualifying, in both divisions, to be fair, are struggling a little bit just if they're not quite getting the draft. And it's not just getting someone that you can get a tow from. You've got to time it right as well. It's all well and good getting a tow through this part of the circuit, but then if you catch the car ahead as you go into the bus stop chicane, then you can actually end up losing all the time you just gained on the previous section. So he dives up the inside there, or drives past Jake Conway, who I think was letting him go for that specific reason, wants to try and drop back just the right amount that he's able to get the perfect slipstream going on to his next lap. Rhys Saunders just finished a lap, which was quite a slow one. I think he might have either backed off or had a moment somewhere. So Saunders stays second. Dan Blake improved there, though. Up into 7th place now for Dan Blake, whose qualifying record has not been brilliant so far this season. He is yet to qualify inside the top 3, and I know that because only the top 3 drivers in each class score points from qualifying, and he has yet to score a point from any qualifying session so far. The pole position driver in each class scores 5 points. Second place gets 3. And third place gets 1 point. And Chris Knox has just improved, therefore, his potential points haul, because he moves from third to second now, does Chris Knox, ahead of Rhys Saunders. So it's a Fast R 1-2. It is the Fast R Esports White team that are doing the best at the moment in this session with... the other one, Fast R Esports team, that are doing better at the moment with Freddie Hewitt. Chris Knox, though, is right on his tail now, only 0.3 of a second between them. Onto the backstretch goes Chris Kidman here, 23rd place at the moment on an outlap from the pit lane, so we're not going to see any improvements from him for the time being, but Chris Kidman 3.3 seconds, as you can see, off the pole position time. The top 4 covered by 3/4 of a second, then the next second covers everyone from 5th back to 9th, so people who are a little bit who are sort of working together here seem to be getting themselves together in the times as well, which sort of makes sense, I guess. Lots of teammates qualifying quite similarly. Rhys Saunders and Ryan Micallef, for example, from year 1 are together on the grid at the moment, 3rd and 4th. Hewitt and Knox we've seen working together 1st and 2nd. Dan Blake, I guess, is the odd one out there slightly. Steve Hefford here in the Momo car comes out of the final turn. That's the Speedway turn 4. Tries to get a bit of a draft there from Ben Constanduris, who was, I think, on his way into the pit lane. And Steve Hefford comes across the start-finish line. Any improvement from Steve? He's 2.4 seconds off at the moment, and he still is. Seeing fewer and fewer improvements. As I say that, we get an improvement from Rhys Saunders. That's typical. Rhys Saunders goes to pole position with a 2 minutes 10.50, half a second quicker than Freddie Hewitt. Chris Knox is about to complete a lap, though. So is Freddie. In fact, they're both working together, Knox and Hewitt. Can either of them improve and knock Rhys Saunders off the top? They cross the line. James Holman jumps up into 5th position, but there's no improvement from Knox, and there's no improvement from Hewitt either. So the new order is Saunders on pole with Freddie Hewitt 2nd, Chris Knox 3rd, Ryan Micallef 4th, and James Holman 5th. We've got still a few minutes to go in this session. It's a 23-minute session. You might have noticed it's a slightly random session length, but that's because, again, one of the quirks of iRacing is that when the time ticks down to 0, that's it. The session ends immediately, whereas in the real world, if you were already on a lap at that point, you would be allowed to finish it. So again, just to mirror the way it would work in real life racing, they've extended the session a bit, so that if you're on a lap when the 20 minutes runs out, you still have time to finish that lap and actually get another lap in, because with a lap time, fastest lap time at the moment of 2:10, you can get 2 whole laps in if you time it right, based on when you get to the line. We're with Ryan Micallef then, who is 4th quickest at the moment, and that looks like one of the Year 1 cars in front of us, possibly, is that Rhys Saunders? Yes, it is. Micallef and Saunders working together, but look at that, Micallef backs off before pulling out to make the pass there. He wasn't going to clear Saunders, before they got to the chicane, and rather than run side by side through the chicane, which would really have helped them up, he just lifted off the throttle. They carried good speed off the chicane though. Easy to run wide on the grass there and completely ruin your lap with an off-track penalty. They've got another car in front that they're slipstreaming with, which might be Morgan Short. It's certainly the right colour, isn't it? One of the red cars just ahead. In fact, it is Morgan Short. He pulls out of the way. Morgan's dropped down to 9th place at the moment in the session. Both of the Year 1 cars go through, and now Ryan Micallef really gets the advantage of the slipstream as he pulls out to try and pass Rhys Saunders across the line. Any improvements from these drivers then as they break the timing beam? Now we wait for a second or so for the times to update. And yes, Ryan Micallef makes it a 1-2 for Year 1 now, a 2 minutes 10.78. He was 1/100th of a second quicker than Rhys Saunders on that lap, but he's not quite as quick as Rhys went on the previous occasion. So 3/10 between them now, a further 1/4 of a second back to Freddie Hewitt in 3rd. And Chris Knox now finds himself 8/10 of a second away from pole position. Knox and Hewitt just finished another lap though, and neither have improved, but James Holman has improved again and goes 4th. So Holman is now splitting Hewitt and Knox. It's happening again here, isn't it, to Chris Knox? He's qualifying, he's not going that well. Not quite as badly as it is, though, for whoever that driver was in the wall then, coming out of turn number 2. Didn't quite spot who that was, but they certainly are not going to be improving their lap time on this occasion. Who was it was a blue car, I could see that went into the wall, not quite sure. Ben Best here, though, is not in the wall. He's going well, 2nd place in Division 2. As we head now into the final few minutes of the qualifying session. So, dramatic session, and it's not quite over yet. There is still time for other drivers to improve here. The next of the quick drivers to come across the start-finish line, well, they're all sort of halfway through the lap. It's Saunders and Micallef are first, and then Hewitt, Holman and Knox are in the next little group of cars on track. So Saunders and Micallef will be the next drivers of note to finish a lap. They're just heading out onto the banking again now, I think, through NASCAR turns 1 and 2. Matt Payne here, currently 5th in Division 2. He needs to find a couple of tenths, though, to move up an extra place, but that's not going to happen. He's ahead of Ian Court, though, by 1/100th of a second. 1/1000th of a second, in fact. Ian Court down in 6th place in the session. Isaac Phelps comes through. And does he stay 21st? Looks as though he probably will. Isaac Phelps, running in Division 1, hasn't contested the full season, but did score some points last time at Laguna Seca. Got 1 point from race 1, finishing 15th, and finished 14th in race 2. So another 2 championship points were scored in the second race. He didn't manage to score in race 3, though, because memory serves, he had an accident in that 3rd race. Right, Rhys Saunders has headed for the pit lane. Ryan Micallef has just completed a lap but not improved. Hewitt and Holman and Knox, though, are all about to come across the start-finish line to start what will be their final lap. No, they're not quite going to get there, I don't think, are they, before the checkered flag? The checkered flag is out, so that is it. No improvement then from them. The grid has been set, and it's going to be Rhys Saunders that heads a Year 1 1-2. Brilliant start to the night for them. They're both running in 2 different sub-teams, if you like. We've got Year 1 we've got Year 1 and Year 1 TV, but nonetheless, good result for Year 1 all round. It's the Year 1 racing car of Rhys Saunders on pole, Year 1 TV's Ryan Micallef alongside. Then it's Freddie Hewitt and James Holman making up row 2. Chris Knox and Steve Hefford share the 3rd row, ahead of Dan Blake and Ben Constanduris on row 4. Carl Jacolette is 9th with the top Division 2 driver Adam Gale in 10th place. Ian Crosby is 11th, with Morgan Short making the 6th row of the grid on his debut. Gavin Johnson's on row 7 alongside Jake Conway, who needs some points from this race, and he's starting from a good position to get some. Michael Seal and Ben Bester on the 8th row together ahead of Martina Ward, Peter Smith, Rob Graham, and Matt Payne to round out the top 20. Ian Court is the championship leader in Division 2, but has to start from 7th on the grid within his class, 21st overall, alongside Isaac Phelps. Then it's Matt Ragsdale and Chris Kidman on the 12th row of the grid together. Then towards the back of the grid, we've got Kevin McGlone, Alan Toon, Alex Hall, and Paul Warren, who really struggled in that session, but perhaps with the racing being as close as we expect it to be, he might be able to get to the front. So race number 1 of the night, then Heat 1 as it says at the top of the screen, but it's race number 1 of 3. And the red lights are about to come on then. Rhys Saunders and Ryan Micallef, who put on a great show for us a week ago at Laguna Seca, are set to do the same thing again. The lights go out. We're away and racing at the World Centre of Racing. And it's a brilliant start made by Rhys Saunders from pole position. Not such a good one from Micallef. And look on the outside line at James Holman as he tries to get the run, the sweeping run round the outside into turn 1. And then the tight turn 2. They will not all get through here without contact. I'm fairly certain of that. The leaders might, but in the midfield, it would be an absolute miracle if there's no wheel banging, quite a bit of shuffling, but actually a pretty clean run. There's one car off wide in the background, but everyone has survived. Now, down into the braking zone they go, into the International Horseshoe, diving up the inside there as they try to make as many positions as they can here on the opening lap, but on cold tyres, these cars are a real handful. Saunders then with the lead. Hewitt up into second place, look, and now challenging for the lead as they go into the Western Horseshoe. Onto the brakes he goes. Freddie Hewitt on the inside line, Saunders on the outside. Needs to be careful here. He wants to try and hold on to the lead, but being second going onto the banking isn't necessarily a bad thing. The leader going out of this next corner is very unlikely, I would say, to still be the leader by the time they get down to the bus stop chicane. Such is the effect of the draft. We'll really get a chance now to see how powerful that is then, as Freddie Hewitt leads them onto the banking for the first time. Second is Saunders, third Micallef, fourth is Chris Knox. James Holman then down to 5th. That outside line didn't work through the first corners, and already you can see the slipstream just pulling Rhys Saunders alongside. And look at that, he leaves the door wide open for his teammate Ryan Micallef to go up the middle. So they're 3 wide for the race lead going down the backstretch at Daytona. And who is going to blink first going into the hairpin? Well, Freddie Hewitt backs out sensibly. It is only lap 1 after all in a 20-minute race, and it's going to be Saunders that gets the lead back. Micallef second, Hewitt third, Knox in 4th, and that looks like it is Steve Hefford up in 5th position. Steve Hefford's had a really good start there, gaining a place now at the expense of James Holman. Also making progress, Morgan Short has picked up 3 places to get within the top 10, whilst further back, though, there have been problems for Peter Smith. Isaac Phelps has been off, Robert Graham too, and Paul Warren never started the race. Right, coming through then to the completion of the first lap of racing. A 4-car breakaway starting to establish itself now, and everyone else trying to be 5th. Dan Blake is in this group, so is Ben Constanduris. They're the 2 cars on the outside. They're 4 wide, and they're 3 wide for the race lead. This will become quite a common sight, I think, over the course of the night, as they all jockey for position into the braking zone. And Chris Knox, who was 4th going on to that section of the banking, leads the field down into turn 2. He couldn't quite get the car pulled up though, so Micallef goes back ahead. Micallef then back to the lead with Knox, Saunders and Hewitt 3rd, 4th and 5th. I need to remind myself not to get too excited by them going 3 wide for the lead, because as I said, that's going to happen quite a lot, and if I let myself get too excited by it, then I will have no voice left by the time we get halfway through race 2. So lead changes you're going to lose count of, but it's a great example of the respect that these drivers have for each other, especially those that are regularly contesting the race wins at the front of the field in Division 1. They've really got great spatial awareness and a great trust and respect in each other that they're not going to mess it up and have a big accident. That's the plan anyway. You would think, though, that it might make sense for these 4 drivers to work together, because they are gapping the field, but Holman, Blake, Constanduris and Hefford are not that far back, and if they work together, they could well close back in on the leaders too. Up through the banking they go once again. On board now with Ben Constanduris, running his 2009 Brawn GP livery, which he's hoping will bring him some success. Still looking for a race win this season is Ben Constanduris. He's got Dan Blake ahead, who goes to the outside of for James Holman, and Constanduris thinks, yeah, there's room for a little one here, goes up the middle, and they will be 3 wide again as they come off turn 2 of the NASCAR banking and head down the backstretch into the chicane. They could even be 4 wide, because Steve Hefford is around here somewhere. No, he's not quite close enough. Hefford staying in 8th position for the time being. In Division 2, meanwhile, it's Adam Gale that leads the way. Jake Conway is second, but Ian Court has come through from about 7th or 8th on the grid to be 3rd. So Ian Court has really gained some ground there. 6 places gained, most of them against Division 2 drivers, which means he's only dropping at the moment 3 points to his nearest championship rival. The gap between Court and Conway, remember, is 48 coming into tonight. Adam Gale going to the high side through the banking there, trying to get past the cars in front, and does so successfully. That's Morgan Short and Ian Crosby that he's racing with. Michael Seals behind him with Gavin Johnson as well, as the 5 of them fan out across the line. Bit of squeezing going on there. Gale was risking coming down into the left front corner of Ian Crosby's car. Crosby sails off into the corner though, and will manage to get into turn 2 ahead of them all. Gavin Johnson, with the power of the slipstream there, sets a really good lap time. 2:11.59 is the new fastest lap of the race, which is worth a bonus point, remember, and that could prove critical for the championship battle as we get deeper and deeper into the race. Morgan Short then we follow, as further back there is Matt Payne running in 6th position in Division 2. Chasing after Carl Jacquelet and Isaac Smith, neither of whom are Division 2 drivers. Sorry, Peter Smith. Peter Smith. 2 Smiths in the race, which is enough to confuse a simple commentator like me. Peter Smith and Carl Jacquelet, both running in Division 1 though, so that's not worth any points for Payne. Payne needs to get past them and then chase after the group ahead. But this is the trouble. Once the field has separated like this into the little groups of battling cars, 4 or 5 cars in each group, it's going to be quite hard to bridge the gap from one to the other, because as soon as you get to the front of your respective train of cars, you're not going to get away from them because the slipstream will pull them straight back to you. So I think you've got what you've got now. Most people are sort of content now to battle it out amongst the drivers that they are with at the end of lap 2. And that's what we're seeing at the head of the field here. Freddie Hewitt now going to the outside, coming off turn 2. He was 4th going on to the banking. He's got his nose in front now, but he's on the outside line into the chicane. In the middle is Mikolev. On the inside is Rhys Saunders, who really bails out of that. Mikolev gets the lead this time into the chicane, with Hewitt 2nd, Knox 3rd, and Saunders 4th. They are not being caught, though, by this group. James Holman is now at the front of the 2nd train of cars in 5th position. Hefford, Constantinos and Blake still with him, but the gap between 4th place Saunders and 5th place Holman is over 2 seconds, and it's growing because Holman isn't close enough to get a slipstream from the cars ahead. So it looks as though, like I said, once they establish themselves in these little mini packs of cars, it's quite hard to get away from one and catch up to the next. 3 wide across the line for Blake, Constantinos and Hefford from outside to inside, that was. Well, could be the way the finish of this race looks. A proper Daytona photo finish could be in store. That wasn't for the lead, but we're going to have multiple examples of this close racing up and down the order. Another 4-car pack here. This is the Seal, Crosby, Short and Adam Gale group, and they too are 2 seconds then ahead of Jake Conway and Gavin Johnson, who are 8 seconds ahead of Matt Ragsdale, Ian Court and Chris Kidman, getting quite big separation as they hold each other up through the infield section and then come back together again on the banking. So on board then with Ian Crosby here, who's got the Division 2 race leader, Adam Gale at the inside. Gale is the other Fastar Esports white driver who does lead the class here. Conway still 2nd, and Matt Ragsdale has worked his way into 3rd place. Ragsdale is, I think I'm right in saying, the biggest mover in the race. Yeah, 8 positions gained for Ragsdale to get 3rd place in Division 2. He's about 2 seconds ahead as well of Ian Court. So, in fact, that has just gone up again. So, Matt Ragsdale, yeah, really getting away from Court. And these two are actually 2 of the loneliest drivers in the race. They're not really under any pressure from anyone else. They're not really in a big group as we're seeing for everybody else. And so, Ragsdale is able to actually relax a little bit here, but Ian Court doesn't seem quite at home at this track, does he? And that is a great example of how this championship can twist and turn from round to round. If you go to a track that doesn't quite suit you as much as the others, you can easily lose a good 30 or 40 points. Remember, there are 35 points for a race win, plus a bonus point for fastest lap, and 5 points for pole position. And there are 3 races. That's well over 100 points each night. So with 6 races still to go, no one has got either of the championships in their back pocket just yet. Alex Hall, another driver like Ian Court, in contention for the Division 2 title. He's a little bit further back than he'd like to be too. 8th in class, chasing Kevin McGlone. And we're about to see what happened to Alex Hall here. Damage sustained as he heads down to the International Horseshoe. And that will mean that the car doesn't want to turn, understandably, because there are only 3 wheels on the wagon. So Alex Hall in the, at this point, appropriately named No Control Racing Car, is going to find himself losing even more ground as a result of that, I think. So as Hall languishes down the order at the head of the field, it's still this 4-car breakaway between Saunders, Micallef, Hewitt and Knox. They're in that order for the time being, but that might well change before much longer. Down into the International Horseshoe they go. First of these two tricky right-handed hairpins on the infield of the circuit, and then they head through the dogleg and into the Western Horseshoe, which is one of the other good overtaking opportunities on the track. It's easy to forget, actually. We focus on the banking and how the oval section of the track presents the drivers with their best chance to pass, and it's definitely the easiest chance to pass, but not the only one. You can make a move through the hairpins on the infield, both at turn 2, then both of the horseshoes, and here as the exit of the banking as well. You can see Freddie Hewitt having a little look at the inside of Ryan Micallef as they went into turn 6. But there's little point in doing that in a way, because you're just going to let them straight back through again, going out onto the banking. Again, brilliant precision formation flying here, isn't it? Almost between the 2 Year 1 cars and the 2 Fast Star cars, the 2 teams at the top of the points as well, remember, but it's the different divisions of the teams that are battling amongst themselves here. No one actually is racing against their direct teammate here, so in a way, no team orders needed. Ooh, the inside, side by side through the chicane, that's difficult to do. That was Micallef on Hewitt for second, and Micallef bailed out of it, but that will kill his momentum out of the chicane. I think that's the first time we've seen any of these leading quartet really try to go side by side through there. They've been keeping most of their overtaking for the flat-out banking section. But as we get deeper into the race now, we are now into the second half of this race, so it will become more and more important to try and assert yourself at the front, which is kind of what Rhys Saunders is doing. Rhys Saunders is 0.8 of a second ahead of this group as Chris Knox comes storming round the outside of both Hewitt and Micallef. Or Micallef, anyway, hasn't quite made the move stick on Hewitt yet. And look at that, Micallef goes to the inside, all 4 wheels below the yellow line. That is perfectly legal on the road course, by the way. I know those of you who are NASCAR fans, like me, will be screaming at your TV saying, oh, you can't pass below the yellow line. Well, you can if you're on the road course. That was a legal move, albeit a slightly dicey one from Ryan Micallef, because that transition from the banking to the apron is very, very sketchy. You can see the way the car almost loses control there as he turns hard left. I so nearly went into the side of Freddie Hewitt's car, and that would have been disastrous. Freddie Hewitt third in the championship. Micallef is 5th. Now, Micallef is 80 points off the top. He's not out of it by any stretch, but realistically, you'd expect him to maybe be helping his half teammate Rhys Saunders here, who leads the race currently. Forget what I said about him having an 0.8 of a second advantage as well, because Chris Knox, having been fired out of the cannon there, going off turn 4 of the banking, was able to carry all of that speed down into turns 1 and 2, and actually has gained another 0.3. So half a second is all that separates them. That means that Knox is definitely close enough now to get a slipstream down the back straight. So we may well have another lead change before much longer. Constant Juris, Seal, Holman and Blake are still at play. And these 4 drivers that have been locked together since the start of the race are once again in close combat. Looking back there at Dan Blake, who goes to the high side. And is he going to be able to drive past them both going down into the chicane? This is some of the best racing we've ever seen from the PDC Racing League. And this is the perfect place, as I said, for these cars. They're very draggy. They're not very powerful. It's all about momentum. But, of course, once you're on the banking, it's easy to pick up the momentum, especially with the slipstream. And they're making this look very easy. But I can assure you, this kind of racing is some of the hardest you will be able to do, be it in the real world or the virtual one. This wheel-to-wheel slipstreaming, the closing speed is so hard to judge, especially when we get into the end of the race and people maybe start trying to throw blocks to try and stop these runs from coming. That's when the big accidents can sometimes occur. Juris there goes 5th, but Dan Blake is now back in the slipstream again, having been driven past going into turn 3. Blake and now Michael Seal both coming back at Constant Juris. There is Blake. Michael Seal's around here somewhere. There he is on the left. And James Holman keeping a watching brief in 8th position. Brilliant stuff from this lot. Bit of a lock up there maybe from Constant Juris into turn 2, but he gets the car turned in. And Constant Juris then for the time being establishes himself in 5th place. Then the next group of cars is also getting bigger. Actually, this was just 2 cars a while ago. Morgan Short and Steve Hefford, though, have been joined by Adam Gale and Ian Crosby now. So 4 cars as one. In fact, I tell a lie, sorry, these 4 have been together since the start, haven't they? It was Jake Conway and Gavin Johnson, who were the pair of battling cars in 13th and 14th positions. But wherever you look, there is side-by-side racing. Morgan Short and Steve Hefford, they're almost leaning on each other as they went through the dogleg. And then down into the Western Horseshoe, neither of them wanting to give way. The 2 red cars absolutely wheel to wheel, but they're not teammates. They're both going for their own points and their own results. And of course, for Morgan Short, there's a late entrance into the championship. He doesn't really have to worry about championship points at all. Good to see Morgan come on maybe for the next season of racing, though. He's clearly a pretty rapid driver. As I said, he's done a bit of sim racing, I know, in the past. I seem to remember he was in the Race of Remembrance at the end of last year, and looking to try and further his iRacing career as well as his real-world career, but he's under pressure now. Oh, look at the run! That is as graphic an illustration as you'll ever get of what I mean by closing speeds. There was nothing that could be done there. We were riding on board with Morgan Short. There was nothing he could do to stop Hefford and indeed Adam Gale going through. But then under braking, Gale is losing out again to Hefford. Short's a bit wayward through the chicane. They're both actually being caught now on this lap by Conway and Johnson. So Jake Conway, that's important for Conway, isn't it? Because Adam Gale, remember, is leading in Division 2. Conway is second. He's got second in the bag because Gavin Johnson is behind him. He's a Division 1 driver. And then they're 13 seconds ahead of Matt Ragsdale, who's third in Division 2. So Jake Conway has got his teammate, Gavin Johnson, working with him. Gavin, look, has sustained some front-end damage too, so his pace might well be affected by that. In fact, it almost certainly will be. But the 2 teammates working together, and if Jake Conway can snatch a win here, that could be really, really useful. It's 35 points for a win and 28 for second, so that's a 7-point advantage if he can get past Adam Gale. So that is Jake Conway's task. He's running out of time. We're into the final stages of the race now, but Jake Conway is going to get there, isn't he? By the time they next get onto the banking, he will be close enough to get a slipstream. Oh, and there's a car off right in front of him as well. That was Ian Crosby, I think, who was having a moment. So that's 1 place gained as he goes on the inside, and Gavin Johnson tried to follow him, locked up and ran wide onto the grass, and almost loses it as he rejoins. Thankfully, they were 13 seconds ahead of the next car, so Johnson won't lose a place, but he has lost the toe. And because of that damage on the front, he was kind of relying on the slipstream, I think, to run the speeds that he was running. Conway, though, has got past Crosby. His next target is Morgan Short, and then he'll be on the tail of the Division 2 race leader, and that could be a really, really important battle when we get there. And in fact, Morgan Short, that's Hefford, isn't it, on the outside there, losing out to Adam Gale. But you can see the dicing cars there really holding each other up. It's the 2 white cars then, the white car at the front of the group and the white car with the pink wheels that's about to join on the back of it. They are the 2 that are going to be fighting for Division 2 race winning honours. Adam Gale, as I said, mathematically is still in contention for the Division 2 title, so he's not going to want to give this away to Jake Conway, especially having led the class all race long. But Conway has played a sensible waiting game here. He's worked with his teammate. Again, doesn't get too caught up battling with Ian Crosby there, because you can see ahead of him that both Steve Hefford and Martin Short have just drafted past Adam Gale. So there is now only 1 car between the 2 Division 2 drivers, and Gale is getting held up now by Hefford and Short, who were both tripping over each other a bit through the chicane and getting a run on all of them. Look, is Ian Crosby. Now, which way do they go? Crosby to the outside, Gale goes to the inside. That means he's boxed in, though, behind Steve Hefford. And where is Jake Conway in all of this? Conway can't be far behind them. They're going to be 3 wide at least coming off of turn 4, and keep an eye to the PDC racing car behind. There he is. Look, Jake Conway is right on the tail now of the Division 2 class leader, and in fact he's making his move for the lead. Goes up the middle. Be careful, Jake, though. He's been involved in so many unfortunate bits of contact in recent races. He can probably see this all going wrong again, can't he? He lifted off the throttle there, backed out of it, and just wants to let them all get on with it, going through turns 1 and 2, and then he might try and attack for the class lead somewhere on the infield section. Terrific racing here. Let's not forget at the front of the field, we still have that 4-car fight, although Rhys Saunders is gapping them all again. Look, Rhys Saunders is now 0.8 of a second ahead of Chris Knox. I think those 3 are just tripping over each other a bit more now in their haste to get after the race leader. They all want to be second, I think, going on to the banking for the final time. That seems to be the best place to be, but that's going to be the real tactical discussion here. Do you want to be leading? Do you want to be second? Do you want to be third? Or do you want to be fourth? Not even at this point on the last lap, but even coming off the bus stop chicane, which is basically the final real corner of the race. do you want to be leading or not? It's the age-old question of oval racing, particularly at a big super speedway like this. The car out in front can be a sitting duck because of this powerful slipstream. You can see it in action again here. Ryan Micallef closing on Chris Knox, pulls to the outside line. They're both gaining again on Saunders now because they're getting a whiff of a slipstream from the race leader, and the closer they get, the more powerful that slipstream is. They've taken 3/10 out of him already, and in fact the leader was weaving way down below the yellow line there, trying to break the toe. That is, I suppose, allowed, but will definitely constitute weaving in a straight line, which is sometimes frowned upon. It didn't work either because Micallef is right there with him now, and Rhys Saunders is going to have a bit of a fight on his hands now as we come through onto what will probably be the final lap, I think, this time, won't it? We're 19 and a half minutes into the race. They should get back to the line just in time to get one more lap in, and this is it then. Where do you want to be? Time to get all of those chess pieces in line and set your strategy for the final lap. Well, Saunders is dropping back. Look, he's been hung out to dry as they all rush towards the start-finish line. Knox takes the lead away, but then on the outside line, here comes Freddie Hewitt in the middle. Freddie Hewitt going for the race lead as they cross the line onto the final lap of racing, down towards turns 1 and 2, and Freddie Hewitt has got himself back in front with Ryan Micallef second place. Third position is Chris Knox, and Rhys Saunders, who was leading going into the bus stop. Just to make my point for me, he was fourth by the time they got to the line. So you do not want to be leading coming off that bus stop for the final time. And that might mean that Freddie Hewitt, as strong a move as that was to move into the race lead when he did, that might not have been a race winning move, because he's going to have his hands very full of all three of those drivers behind him by the time they get onto the banking for the final time. And that will be this time. We are into the final lap of the race now. It's been a brilliant first race, just as exciting as we thought it would be. Oh, and Ryan Micallef so late on the brakes going into the Western Horseshoe, almost ran into the back of Freddie Hewitt. That would have been rather embarrassing and certainly not gone down well for the man who currently sits third in the championship. Remember, if Hewitt beats Saunders in this race, he will pretty much guaranteed move into second place in the championship, and they all want to try and beat Chris Knox because he's the one with a 27-point cushion in the points. Here we go then, on to the backstretch for the final time. Hewitt has the lead, Micallef is second, Saunders and Knox are side by side for third, and now the slipstream starts to come into effect. Look at the way they close. Freddie Hewitt, is he going to lose the lead before they get to the bus stop? That might not be a terrible thing, actually. Even if he does, he tries to move high to block Micallef, succeeds in doing it, but I don't think Micallef wants to get past him. I think Micallef wants to be second coming off this chicane, and Rhys Saunders was having the same idea in third. None of them wanted to go through into the bus stop because they know they probably won't hang on coming out of it. Here we go then, place your bets. It's the 10th round of the PDC Racing League. One of these four drivers should win. Will it be Hewitt? Will it be Micallef? Will it be Saunders? Or will it be the championship leader, Chris Knox? Knox is making his move for third, and Micallef makes his late move for the race lead, 2 by 2, as they come off turn number 4 for the final time. Get that photo finish camera ready, because the four of them will be absolutely together when they get to the line. It's going to be 3 wide, it's going to be 4 wide as they come through the tri-oval. On the outside line, I think that is Chris Knox who might get there. No, it's going to be Rhys Saunders by a nose. Rhys Saunders wins the first race of the night at the Daytona International Speedway. Chris Knox is second, Freddie Hewitt third, and Ryan Micallef fourth. And the top 4 drivers, after 22 minutes of racing, were separated by less than a tenth of a second. The drivers vote on which racetrack they want to use on a weekly basis in this league, and they absolutely nailed their decision this week. This is the perfect circuit for these cars and this championship, and that is exactly why. Michael Seal, by the way, came home 5th. Dan Blake was 6th, ahead of Ben Constantinos and James Holman, whilst in Division 2, Adam Gale did hang on from Jake Conway, so Gale gets the Division 2 lead. But look at that. That is a thing of beauty as Rhys Saunders uses the apron, which is perfectly legal to do, and gets the race win by officially 4/100ths of a second from Hewitt, who was a further 200ths back, and Ryan Micallef, who was a further 300ths back. Absolutely incredible. And Ryan Micallef judged that to perfection. He knew that if he was in the race lead coming out of the bus stop, he wouldn't win the race. And actually, I think he knew that if he was second, he wouldn't win the race either. He settled for third in the end, and I'm going to make a note of that because that's something I'll monitor now over the final 2 races of the night, because if we do get another big pack of cars racing like that, I want to know which position they need to be in. So third place going into the chicane was the position to be in for Rhys Saunders. Whether that will continue to work for the drivers later on in the night. We'll have to wait and see. Right, I don't know if we're going to have time to talk to Rhys Saunders, but he is in the waiting room. So should we drag him in and have a chat before he has to dash for race 2? Rhys, that was absolutely incredible. How much were you thinking on that final lap about what position to be in coming out of that final chicane?
Wasn't even on the final lap. It pretty much been rehearsed from about lap 2 of trying to figure out where I wanted to be and when I wanted to be there. I realised we did a dummy run about 2 from the end, and I realised that being in 4th, I wouldn't quite get it because Chris beat me to the line that lap. So yeah, it was like a high-speed game of chess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the perfect track for these cars, isn't it? That was a brilliant race, and the good news about this new format is you get to start at the front again for this one.
Yeah, it's great. Obviously, it gives me race 2 pole as well, so it gives us a chance to do it all over again, hopefully.
Well, best of luck, and if you can put on another show even half as good as that one, then we'll all be thanking you at the end of it.
We'll do our best. Cheers, Andy.
Rhys Saunders then gets the race win, and because of this new format I was on about, he has to run straight onto the grid for race 2, where he will start on pole position. Chris Knox will be second, then it's Freddie Hewitt and Ryan Micallef on row 2 together. Michael Seal and Dan Blake on the 3rd row. Ben Constanduris and James Holman make up row 4 ahead of Ian Crosby and Steve Hefford. Then the top 2 in Division 2, Adam Gale and Jake Conway, are on the 6th row of the grid together. Row 7 will be Morgan Short and Gavin Johnson ahead of Carl Jacklett and Matt Ragsdale, who hasn't taken the start, which gets underway now. Away they go. There was someone else missing from the front of the grid as well, and that was Chris Knox. Chris Knox has not made the grid for race number 2, so Chris Knox might not be a starter in this second race of the night. He didn't get the memo about the change in format, did he? Go straight from race 1 to race 2. It's Hewitt then that gets the lead through turn 1, but that could be real disaster for the championship leader, Chris Knox, who already lost some points in the previous race, and now he might be set to lose a few more. Hewitt then leads them through the International Horseshoe for the first time. Saunders is second. 3rd is Micallef. Michael Seal trying to go with them in 4th. And this is now a big chance for everyone to hit the reset button. The first race was decided, in a way, on the first lap, because those 4 drivers, Hewitt, Saunders, Micallef and Knox, broke away from the rest of the field. No one else could catch them after that. Oh my word, Micallef with a big lock-up on cold tyres there as he tried into the Western Horseshoe there on the inside of Rhys Saunders. Takes second place, but in a rather heart-stopping moment. Yes, back to the point I was making. If you don't get away with the lead draft on the first lap, you're probably not going to catch them in the remaining 18 minutes or so. So this first lap is pivotal. Everyone jockeying for position, but they all want to stay within sight of the race leader, who at the moment is Freddie Hewitt. Micallef and Saunders are about to go side by side for second position by the looks of it, as they work their way out around the banking once more for the first time in this second race of the night for the PDC Racing League even. And as they race down the back straight, we've got 5 drivers, 6 drivers even, absolutely together through the chicane. Oh, Constanduris has lost it. Ben Constanduris is off and he's into the barriers. That's a shame. Ben Constanduris, oh, they're proving my point that I made at the start of the night, that he's been quick but a bit accident prone, just lost the rear, which is so easy to do on cold tyres. These things are a nightmare on cold tyres, and that was Ben Constanduris proving that. Once they go, there is very little chance of you getting it back, and Ben sadly finds himself with a one-way ticket to the barriers and to the pit lane now, ultimately for repairs. Dan Blake then in 7th position here in the lead pack, just about. The lead pack is definitely bigger this time than it was in the previous race. As I said, it was a 4-car breakaway in race 1. This time we've got, well, let's say the top 7 we've got all together, and Dan Blake we're on board with throwing it round the outside. Tries to take 4th place, no, 5th place, that was he was trying to get, but he actually comes out of the corner in 7th, such is how close it is. Who are the contenders in this one then? Well, we've got Freddie Hewitt leading, Ryan Micallef 2nd, Rhys Saunders 3rd, Steve Hefford 4th, Michael Seal 5th, James Holman 6th, and Dan Blake 7th, although that nearly went from 7 down to 6 then, as Michael Seal had a huge moment coming out of the International Horseshoe. He was way wide over the curbs and the grass, and he'll surely lose that 5th place now to James Holman. There, at the back of the grid, meanwhile, is that Gavin Johnson? It's one of the PDC cars, isn't it? Yeah, Gavin Johnson, number 9 car, who has lost his front wing again, I'm afraid. Gavin Johnson running in Division 1, remember. He's lost 6 positions from where he started. Constant Juris, obviously one of the big losers. He is right at the back of the field, and Chris Knox never did get out there. So Chris Knox then is going to be a non-scorer. Oh, no, sorry, this is Chris Knox. I beg your pardon. 2 laps down. So if he can get into the top 15 in class, which he should be able to do, he will get some points. But this was always the fear with this quick turnaround. You've got to remember, racing drivers are, they get into a routine and they get used to things working one way for however many months we've been doing this now. And then when you change it, they forget. And a racing driver's routine, especially after as intense a race as that first race was, will probably involve taking the gloves off, getting out of the sim rig, having a nice cold drink, and just taking a breather for 5 minutes. And he probably, I'm guessing, has gone and done exactly that and missed the fact that the second race was starting. But all is not completely lost here for Chris Knox. As I said, he is still potentially going to pick up a handful of points, but it will not be as many points as he should have done. And it's another example, perhaps, of this championship just starting to slip away a little bit. So what about the points after that first race? I'm going to deliberately try and not focus too much on how close the racing is at the front here. I've got to pace myself, I think, over the course of the night. We are going to get another lead change here. It's Freddie Hewitt and Ryan Micallef side by side. Micallef goes through on the inside, and Hewitt just about gets across to cover from Rhys Saunders. I'm going to distract myself from the really exciting racing by doing something that's not really exciting. Maths. I'm going to try and work out what the points mean after that first race, because it was a third consecutive win, remember, for Rhys Saunders. That's 35 points for him. Second place went to Chris Knox, which means he gets 28. And then it was 25 points, wasn't it, for third place Freddie Hewitt. Leaders side by side again as they go through the dog leg. And Micallef, I think, will hang on here, does he? Into the braking zone? Yes, Micallef just about hangs on to the race lead. So taking a look at those top 3 in the points then, it is now 20 points, my reckoning, between Chris Knox and Rhys Saunders, and that was a mistake from Ryan Micallef. So Freddie Hewitt, who is now 33 points off the championship lead, sweeps into the lead of the race now. So he will be pretty happy with that. We've got Steve Hefford up there now in third place as well, getting past James Holman, Saunders, Blake, and now it's only 6 cars in the lead group now. Who have we lost? Because this was definitely 7 half a lap or so ago. We have got Micallef, Hewitt, Hefford, Holman, Saunders, and Blake. So, who has dropped back? Chris Knox. No, I'm not sure who it was. There was definitely a 7th car, though. There was absolutely 7 cars. It might have been Ian Crosby, now I think about it. I think Crosby had gone with them and must have had a moment somewhere. We'll try and dig back through the replays. And this is the problem, you see. If I try and do maths in the middle of a race, I will either get the maths wrong or miss something, or both. So having now worked out what the championship standings are, I'll focus on the racing again for a second. Micallef still with the lead, but look at that. I mean, the power, well, it's not extra power, it's just extra speed, but it looks like you've got an extra gear in the car when you get that run in the slipstream. And Hewitt goes to the lead, but then instantly Rhys Saunders pulls out to pass him as well. Down below the line goes Hewitt, as much to try and stay out of the way as anything, and it's another 4 wide run into the first corner. That won't work. Someone has to bail out, and it's Steve Hefford that does so. Right to the outside goes Rhys Saunders, and Dan Blake and James Holman are also involved in this battle now. Chris Knox may not be in this lead group, but we've got actually an extra 2 cars now than we ever had in race 1 debating the race lead. They're nearly 6 seconds ahead of Ian Crosby, who is 7th. Jake Conway, by the way, leads in Division 2. So I will very quickly, whilst they're not on the banking, move to the Division 2 points now, because, of course, it was a 2nd place for Jake Conway in the end, wasn't it, in the previous race. So he gets himself 28 championship points. Now, where did Ian Court end up? 1, 2, 3, 4... 5, 6, 7th place in the end for Ian Court, which is worth 16 points. So that means, according to the Magic spreadsheet, that he's now 36 points ahead of Jake Conway. So Conway did lose some... did take some points out of Ian in the previous race, but of course he really could have done with the win. The win in the end went to Adam Gale. So if I give him 35 points, he's only 59 off the top now. But Adam Gale is not running quite so well in this one, and it's Conway that's done in race 2 exactly what Adam Gale did in race 1, where Conway has managed to escape with a pack of Division 1 cars. In this case, he is tagged onto the back of Ian Crosby, And he's actually got a good 12 and a half or so seconds over Ben Best, who is the next best of the Division 2 drivers. He's under pressure from Martina Ward. Where did Martina end up in the first race? She was well down the order, actually. She was 9th place, so not too many points scored for Martina Ward. It is really boiling down now, I think, to a 2-horse race in Division 2 between Ian Court and Jake Conway, and at the moment they keep on trading blows, don't they? But this week it seems that maybe this is a track that suits Conway a bit better. Martina Ward there got a really good exit from the chicane and gets herself ahead of Isaac Phelps, so she's now on the tail of Ben Best, who is 2nd place in the class. And if we stay on board here with Martina, we'll really see this slipstream. She was not that close really to Ben Best coming onto the banking. That's interesting. Best goes down to the apron there to try and break the toe, and that didn't work at all, did it? Because he had no grip down there. Once you drop off that 36 degrees of banking in the corners, in fact, he's pulled down because he's pitting. So why is Ben Best in the pit lane? I don't think he had damage. Is it a penalty? I haven't seen any notification of a penalty, but there he was. So I wondered why he was down on the banking. Ben Best was heading for the pits. So Ben Best then takes himself out of 2nd place in Division 2, and that means that if he's in the pit lane for long enough, Ian Court will probably pick up another place, which I think will probably happen, to be honest. So that's an interesting development. Now, at the head of the field, Freddie Hewitt leads the way, but that rear wing is not in showroom condition, so he's had contact. Now, which of these drivers was the culprit? Because they're all still there. Who's got a damaged front wing, I suppose, has to be the next question. It doesn't look like it's Micallef in 2nd or Saunders in 3rd. In fairness, all of those front wings... hang on, Holman. Just let's have a look at the front of Holman's car if we can, because it might have just been a shadow, but maybe the left front corner of that car was... no, yeah, I think maybe the left front corner of that car has been just pranged a little bit, possibly into the back of Freddie Hewitt's car. It won't do too much damage, but in fact, you can see damage to the rear of Holman's car as well. So I think at some point there's been one of those little concertinas, hasn't there, into a braking point. They've all run into the back of each other, but gentle contact like that, these cars are quite resilient to. It's when you start knocking wheels off them that understandably it starts to affect your speed. So Freddie Hewitt then, 3rd place coming off the bus stop. Now, according to Rhys Saunders, that is the magic place to be on the last lap. If you can come off that chicane in 3rd, you'll get to the line in 1st. But I'm not sure Hewitt's quite going to get there this time, is he? Because Rhys Saunders is a bit further ahead, although they are gaining, aren't they, in the slipstream? Look, Hewitt on the outside to the inside, Micallef. Are they going to get to Saunders before the line? Yes, they absolutely are. So I spoke way too soon when they came off the bus stop there. And if that was the finish, Saunders, I think, would have just held on to 2nd with his now customary below the yellow line. But it's actually Steve Hefford who now goes into 2nd place and has a big wiggle as he drops onto the brakes into turn 2. He's wheel to wheel still with Rhys Saunders, and Steve Hefford, who has been become a bit of a regular in the PDC Racing League over the last couple of seasons. He finds himself in the middle of a 3-wide situation now as they go through the horseshoe, and that's Dan Blake coming up to challenge. Dan Blake 2nd on the all-time wins list, remember. 7 career victories, if you like, in the PDC Racing League, 1 fewer than Freddie Hewitt. So if Blake can win this race, they'll draw level once again. But Steve Hefford has never won a race in the PDC Racing League. In fact, has Steve Hefford had a podium? No, I don't think he has. So Steve Hefford looking for his first podium, perhaps, in the PDC Racing League. That would be pretty cool if he could hang on to it. But you can be 3rd at one corner, and then you can be 6th at the next. It's just that kind of a race, isn't it? Just like we saw in race 1. Micallef and Saunders, though, look, have actually broken away. Now, that's significant because they are both operating out of the Year 1 stable. So is Dan Blake, actually. So there are 3 Year 1 drivers in this group. If they could get themselves together and work together, they might be able to actually get away from the rest of the cars behind them. Certainly Saunders and Micallef are doing that, and they're leaving Blake to deal with the other 3, aren't they? Which he's doing quite a good job of at the moment, because you can see the gap that's opened out between 2nd place Micallef and 3rd Hefford is actually over a second now. Now, 1 second is about how far back you have to drop to lose the draft. So Hefford and Blake need to get a move on now if they're going to reel the leaders back in. Let's see, is it coming down? Hefford 3 seconds behind as they went onto the banking. And no, he's dropping away from the leaders. So, yeah, they have now lost the toe to the top two. Micallef and Saunders might have played this absolutely perfectly. We're into the second half of the race now. And because this lot keep on running 3 and 4 wide, they're allowing the leading two to break clear. And that is not good news for Freddie Hewitt, because he would much rather be able to stay with Rhys Saunders and stop Rhys from taking a big chunk of points out of him. Hewitt sideways into turns 1 and 2 there as he tries to gain all the time back in one corner, which is never usually a good idea. But yeah, if I were the Year 1 Racing team manager, I would be getting onto the radio to Micallef and Saunders and saying, don't race each other for a while, build a gap over the rest of the field, and then sort it out between yourselves on the final lap. Now, there are the top two, 2 tenths between them, although the gap between second and third is coming down again. And just to add extra spice to the mix, there is traffic ahead, and it's 2 back markers that appear to be rather preoccupied, battling each other, which sometimes means that they're not always watching their mirrors. I'm not sure who those 2 drivers are. They will be, well, presumably, Rob Graham and Alex Hall, the last 2 cars on the lead lap. Hall has been in the pit lane, I think, which is why he's so far down the order. The same is true of Rob Graham, although Hall did start back for this race. Alex Hall probably waving goodbye to his Division 2 championship hopes now. Winner of the third race at Okayama in Division 2 was Alex Hall, but he's not going to win this one. Jake Conway looks good for that. He's still 11 seconds clear of Martina Ward in Division 2, with Gale third, Kidman fourth, Payne fifth, McGlone sixth, and Ian Court is down in 7th position already, so it's going to be another very low points haul for the championship leader. Bit of wheel banging there, I think, maybe between the Year 1 drivers, but this lappery that they're doing is playing perfectly into the hands of Freddie Hewitt, who arrives on the scene visibly quicker than the Year 1 cars could do, and Hewitt is going to catch this traffic in a far more useful position. He's going to catch it going onto the banking, so not only will it be an easier overtake, but he actually gets the benefit of a slipstream now from Alex Hall ahead of him, who will pull to the high side. Rob Graham, Alex Hall, the first time. Alex Hall goes a lap down, and Hewitt now has a slipstream not only from the back markers, but from the race leaders. This has been a brilliant lap from Freddie Hewitt, because he has pulled away from Holman, Blake and Hefford by nearly a full second, and he has done what I thought was impossible, which is bridge the gap of more than a second between one group of cars and the other. He's not quite there yet. He's got to dive up the inside of Rob Graham, which he does successfully into turn 1. That really difficult braking zone. You're braking on a turn and you transition from the banking down to the flat of the infield. And Freddie Hewitt did that beautifully to now latch himself onto the tail of the leading 2. We are into the final, nearly 4 minutes now of the race. And it's once again a 3-way fight. Now, this is the Division 2 battle for second place going into turn 1. Adam Gale is now ahead of Martina Ward, and we're on board with Martina, who currently sits 3rd in this group and 3rd in class as well. The car at the front of the group is not a Div 2 driver. That's Morgan Short, running 8th in Division 1, 9th overall, who has found some playmates here in the shape of some of the podium runners in Division 2. Chris Kidman is about 4 seconds behind this lot, so not likely to catch them. And in Court is not likely to catch anybody in Division 2, so it really does look as though the Division 2 Championship is going to really tighten up here, because Jake Conway's on course for 35 points, and Court's going to be getting on for single figures, or certainly low teens, so could be a 20-plus gain. And remember, Conway's only 36 behind, so all of a sudden, all of the struggles from Laguna Seca are sort of getting put behind him now. So the race leader, Freddie Hewitt, Freddie Hewitt, that's new. Freddie Hewitt was 3rd when I last looked, and in the space of one straight, he's drafted his way back through to the lead. Now, as these 3 start to battle, is it going to allow the others to close in? Because Blake, Holman and Hefford are just over a second back. The gap between Saunders in 3rd and Blake and Holman, in fact, who are side by side now for 4th, is about 1.5 seconds. They're losing time because they're side by side. If they could get themselves organised, they could catch the leaders, who themselves are side by side. Micallef to the outside, Hewitt down low. Saunders isn't going to go from 3rd to 1st this time. He doesn't quite get to the line in time. How long's left? 2 minutes and 20 seconds. They should have time for 2 more laps. It will be tight, but I think they'll get 2 more laps in. And Freddie Hewitt goes back to the lead again on the inside of the road. He gets 2 wheels in the dirt there, which seems to be a line that he quite enjoys taking going into turn 1. Slides the car through the corner and puts himself in front. But it was Hewitt, wasn't it, that led onto the final lap last time, and he ended up finishing third, and he was the car that was third halfway around the final lap, Rhys Saunders that won. So Hewitt, if I were Hewitt, I'd be thinking that through now. When do I want to hit the front? Hitting the front now is not necessarily a bad idea because there's every chance he'll lose the lead now to those two drivers down the back straight, but those two drivers might not try to overtake him. They might just settle in behind Freddie Hewitt and follow him through to the final lap. Because once you get to the final lap, big lock up there as they went into the hairpin. As they go on to the final lap, that's the time to make the move. They are being caught, aren't they, as well? Look, Holman is right with them now, actually. So James Holman's going to get a slipstream. They're all going to be back together, aren't they? Because Blake is just close enough to Holman to get a tow, and Hefford, I think, is just close enough to Blake. So as we go on to the final lap, there'll be just the 6 cars fighting for the race victory. A few of them looking a bit worse for wear after some contact earlier on in the race, but still, any one of those 6 could take it. Well, this is going to be a fascinating final lap, and so many championship-defining stories to be told here, remember, particularly between Saunders and Hewitt, who are first and second, or second and first, respectively, at the moment. Hewitt is 13 points behind Saunders now after Saunders' win in the previous race. He took 10 points out of Hewitt in that first race. So that is, in itself, an important battle, and then the others really just going for good results. Dan Blake with still an outside shot at the title, but realistically just wants to try and get himself a race win. I don't think he's ever gone through a season of PDC racing without winning a race, Dan Blake, and at the moment he is winless in this season. And actually these 3 are not going to catch the leading trio because they still won't work together. That's the trouble with having 3 cars all from different teams. There's no agenda here, is it? They're just going for it for themselves, and they're leaving the top 3 to it now. Onto the final lap we're about to go. 3 wide here for 4th position. Dan Blake in the middle, I think, should get this if he doesn't drift up too high into Steve Hefford. Be a battle on the brakes between Dan and Steve. Steve goes right round the outside. Dan Blake contests it at the apex and actually does a nice job to get through the corner, takes the place, but doesn't really slow himself up too much. So if these 3 start falling over each other on the final lap, Blake might still be able to get to them. This will be interesting. It's Saunders, Micallef and Hewitt leading. Now, Rhys Saunders is not where he wants to be. Remember, he told us after race 1 that 3rd place on the last lap is where you want to be. He is leading as they're about to go onto the banking in a few corners. Can he drop himself from 1st to 3rd on the first section of the banking to then be able to draft past the other 2 coming out of the bus stop? And will the other 2 let him? Because Freddie Hewitt, I'm sure, will be wise to that and won't want to let Rhys Saunders get away with those sort of tactics. This will be a fascinating final half a lap. They're heading onto the banking for the final time, and the race may have started officially 20.5 minutes ago, but it's really starting now. This is when it will be decided through turns 1 and 2 of the NASCAR banking. Dan Blake has still got a chance of this, you know, and this is for 2nd place. Freddie Hewitt doesn't want to be 3rd. He's worried that he's too far back maybe from Rhys Saunders. He goes for 2nd. Now, will he make the move on the year 1 driver in front? He's in the tow. He's got the pace that if he wanted to pull out and pass Rhys Saunders, he could. Saunders pulls down below the yellow line, trying to block. Dan Blake is closing all the time on these as well, and Rhys Saunders has not been able to shake the race lead. He will lead them going into the bus stop for the final time, but all 6 cars are absolutely together again. Saunders, Hewitt, Micallef, Blake, Hefford, and there's contact, and off the road goes Dan Blake. Of course it's Dan. Dan off the road. Steve Hefford delayed as well. Then there were 4. It is still Saunders that has the lead. Freddie Hewitt swings to the high side through 3 and 4, but he loses all of his momentum in doing so and opens the door for the others on the inside. That was not a good move from Freddie Hewitt. It's going to be Micallef and Holman that have the run on Saunders. Saunders goes high to try and block Holman. He can't quite get there. They're going to be 4 wide again going to the start-finish line. Hewitt might have timed it perfectly. Surely Freddie Hewitt cannot go from 2nd to 4th to 3rd. No, he can't. It's James Holman that wins the 2nd race at Daytona. What a finish. James Holman came out of absolutely nowhere. He was 5th, I think, going on to the final lap, and a good 2.5 off the race leaders, and he came through to win it in sensational fashion. Holman with the win, Hewitt 2nd, Micallef 3rd, and Rhys Saunders, he said he didn't want to lead going into the final lap, and that is exactly why. He was leading with less than half a mile to go, and he ends up 4th at the line, just over 1/10 of a second away from the victory. Can we have every race at Daytona, please? This is absolutely incredible. I thought we were going to get good racing. I didn't realise it was going to be quite this epic. James Holman round the outside. Mikolev tried his best to block that run, and Holman almost ended up wandering into the wall as a result. But Ryan Mikolev wasn't able to block the run, and somehow I really don't understand how Freddie Hewitt ended up getting back to second. I want to know if that was a calculated move. He knew that if he was second going through turns 3 and 4 of the banking, he wouldn't get to the line first. And I wonder if let's see if we can maybe ride on board with Hewitt through all of this. He's going through the chicane. He's in second. That's Blake into the back of Mikolev. Oh dear. That'll go down like a lead balloon, won't it? And Steve Hefford, I think, just got delayed trying to avoid him. Right, this is Hewitt. He's got the run. He pulls out high. And he must lift. He must have lifted off, right? Because that looked for all the world like a perfect slingshot on Saunders, but he knew that was too early. So he lets Holman and Mikolev go. He pulls back down, and look at the run he gets off the corner using the gravity from the banking as well. Sweeps down below the line. That's the line that Saunders used to win race 1. It doesn't quite get Hewitt the victory this time, but it gets him second place and closes him right back in on Saunders in the championship. And of course, with Chris Knox not finishing that or not scoring many points in that one, I'm going to do the calculations after this race when I've caught my breath. But with Chris Knox perhaps not being classified as a point finisher, or if he is, he'll be a long way down the order. That could prove to be a really important second place for Freddie Hewitt. Let's take nothing away, though, from James Holman, who manages to get himself his first ever victory in the PDC Racing League. It's his 5th podium, but the first time he's been on the top step of it. So hopefully we'll have a chance to have a word with James. He came and chatted to us last week at Laguna Seca. Don't go anywhere, by the way, because we have another race still to go. And, well, it's going to be good again, isn't it? Let's be honest. There's no doubt about that. Well worth sticking around for. We are now going into a little bit of an interval between the races, but we will, first of all, have a chance to get some interviews in. So we're going to try and chat to certainly the podium finishers from that race, and then we'll maybe take a break and try and find a few other drivers that we want to have a word with before the final race. Let's start, though, shall we then, with our race winner from that race, James Holman, who is waiting for us now outside the commentary box. And that was a brilliant victory. James, I think you were 5th going on to that last lap, but you weren't even that close to the race leaders. Did you honestly think that was on halfway around the final lap?
Yes and no. No, not really, because I had a little bit of damage from the start. So my plan was just to sit. Well, I was trying to close into the leaders to try and sit into their toe, but with my damage, I just couldn't really sit in their toe. So when Dan and Steve got alongside me, I thought, well, right, I'll let them go and I'll see. I knew no one would want to lead off the last chicane to the line, so I was hoping that they'd play games. And Dan and Steve having a bit of a coming together gave me the perfect run. I was just able to just keep absolutely pinned all the way through on the exit, and it just worked out. It just broke absolutely perfectly for me. So yeah, absolutely delighted with that. Motorsport on Tour.com car went in there on its new debut for its paint as well. So yeah, absolutely delighted.
Yeah, I did notice the new livery as well. It's rather fetching, but I'd imagine you're one of those drivers that quite like this style of racing, because some drivers just won't like it. You know, the slipstreaming, the 3 and 4 wide racing. But coming from the Legends background that you come from, I'd imagine you're quite used to this sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's all about tactical and being in the right place at the right time. It's hard to get right, especially with the Legends as well. You know, it's hard to get right, and it also is about that little bit of luck. And obviously, I had that little bit of luck there in that chicane with Dan and Steve just making a bit of contact there, so it gave me that run. I still wasn't sure if I'd gone too early, because when Reese pushed me up high, I thought, oh, I don't know. It's like I didn't know, especially with the damage I was carrying. I didn't know if I was going to be okay. But I saw Ryan had a bit of damage, and I knew Freddie had a bit of damage, because we were kind of working together to try and catch back up to the leaders. And obviously Freddie got there and I didn't, so it was a bit frustrating at that point. But yeah, no, just absolutely hard. I'd say it's very much close to my real life racing, and especially on tracks like this. You know, I've raced in tracks all around Europe with the Legends, like raced at Monza, and it's been the same thing. You're just sitting there waiting for the last lap, and Portimao and places like that. So you just sit there and wait for the last lap, really, and hope you sort of try and be third, fourth car in line, and then just try and win that drag race to the line. Doesn't always work, but on this occasion it did.
It certainly did, and it was a thrill to go and catch your breath, have a bit of a lie down, and hopefully we'll see you back on the podium in race 3.
Yeah, it's just going to be another. I think it's going to be just another race like the same as what we've had the first two. I mean, they've both been good races, and hopefully I can be on the right side of it again this time and get that motorsportontour.com car back into the top step of the podium.
Good stuff, James. Well done on the race victory then in race number 2 for James Holman. Finally gets his first win in the PDC Racing League and his 5th podium finish. Now, second place went the way of Freddie Hewitt, who is ready to join us now. Freddie Hewitt with a really important second place, but a fascinating run to the line there. And it's something I definitely want to ask him about. Freddie, congratulations, first of all, on the podium. And that goes along quite nicely with your third place from earlier on this evening. I want to talk to you, though, about the final corner, because you came out of that chicane second place, right behind Rhys Saunders. You got the toe, you pulled out, and then you didn't go anywhere. Now, was that tactical? Did you know that was too early to make the move?
Oh, yeah, of course it was tactical. I think here the toe's really weird because if you get a good enough toe, you'll find yourself in the lead going around the banking. But then you'll find that the person you've just towed will then tow back past you down the straight. So it's just a key of getting to that straight behind someone and then just seeing where the draft and the side draft will take you.
Which in this case was second place, but it could so easily have been 5th or 6th, couldn't it? Now, were you aware that Chris, I guess you were aware that Chris Knox didn't take the start, so it really was important for you, wasn't it, to capitalise on that and try and win if you could, but at the very least get on the podium?
Yeah, Chris had a bad weekend, or bad week last week. So obviously that's playing in my mind quite a bit, but we're still teammates at the same time. I still want him to do just as well as I do. You know, we're still racing for the same brand. But it's personally for me, if I want to win the championship, I've still got to work for myself a little bit, and Chris has got to do the exact same, and I'm sure he is doing the exact same. But Chris and Rhys are sort of the main targets now. Just trying to get in front of them and see where it takes us come next week.
I was just talking to James Holman, who obviously comes from a Legends racing background, and he said this is the kind of racing he really likes. It's very similar to how Legends racing works in the real world. Are you a driver that falls into the, I enjoy this whole drafting, slipstreaming kind of racing, or not?
It's definitely fun. I don't know if I could put up with it every week for the rest of my life, but it's definitely fun when you're going down a straight 4 abreast and you've got to find the grass or a bit of extra tarmac, which really isn't there to use. But it's a race of mind games, really, and seeing what the others are going to do. You know, trying to show your nose up the inside midway through the race to see how much the car in front wants to race you at that period in the race. Which on here they seem to be doing from lap 1, and I'm quite happy to keep driving around, battering into each other for 20 minutes if that's what we've got to do to win. Well,
it's certainly entertaining to watch, I have to say, and I may have just said in commentary that I want every race to take place at this track in the future, so apologies in advance if they do for once happen to listen to me, but we've really enjoyed the show tonight, Freddie, and best of luck for the final race.
Cheers, thank you to my sponsors, Faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Good night so far for the Fast Star team, and they'll be hoping it continues into race 3. Now, have we got time, Graham, to have a word with Chris Knox before we dive over? We have. That's good news, because I've got many questions for Chris Knox, some more positive than others. I'm going to start with the obvious one. What happened at the start of race 2? Because you were supposed to be on the front row.
Yeah, little issue with Windows Mixed Reality and my new Reverb G2. Wouldn't let me use my in-game mouse in VR, so I couldn't click the grid button, which was hugely frustrating, as you can imagine.
That's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say you'd gotten the loo, or you were getting a drink, or you collapsed from exhaustion after that first race, because it was a pretty crazy first race, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's always the same on these like hugely demanding draft tracks. So the first 90% of the race is just literally keeping out of trouble, and it's not really a race, to be honest. It's just more of spatial awareness and make sure the pack behind isn't closing. And then the last 2 laps, it's game on, and it's all about timing the tow right out of the bus stop.
Which I mean, in race 1, you came out of it second, didn't you? As I say, and speaking to Reese after that race, and he said, "Yeah, I wanted to be third. I'd worked out that third place was the right place to be." But then Freddie managed to do it that time by going from second to fourth to first on the way to the line. I mean, is there a right place to be on the last lap, or can you plan for it, or do you just have to sort of wait and see how the cards fall when you get there?
Yeah, you certainly don't want to be in the first two, that's for sure. After that, really, it's a lottery. It depends on where the cars go in front. If you're like if I'd have went left, when Reese went left, I probably would have just done him on the line. But because I went right, I was the fastest car, but I had the longest distance to go, so that's why I missed out by, I think it was 500ths of a second or something. But yeah, well, hopefully if I get into race 3, it should be interesting, starting 26th or whatever. So it's going to be
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, it's just going to be obviously a bit wound up after race 2, so all or nothing really.
Is this the time to tell you that I think you've lost the championship lead by 2 points as well? It probably isn't, is it?
Oh, I'm not really bothering about that at the moment. It's just a bit annoyed about my hardware issues at the moment. So hopefully if I get in, I can get back on track again.
Right, well, I'll let you go then, because I want to make sure that you do have a bit of time to sort that out, because we want to see you out there. It's turning into a brilliant championship battle. This will be a shame if you were to lose any more points. Hopefully, we'll see you out there, Chris.
Oh, cheers, guys.
Chris Knox, then an up and down night, I think it's fair to say, so far at Daytona. Right, we are going to take a very short break. We've got just under 10 minutes, I believe, before our final race gets underway. Do not go anywhere, because it's going to be another slipstreaming thriller here from the Daytona International Speedway. Well, I hope you're sitting comfortably, everyone. We're back at the Daytona International Speedway, where we have one more race to bring you tonight in the PDC Racing League. It is the third race, which means that for this night, for the first time, and hopefully this is something I'll continue to do, it will be a reversed grid. I've just been given notification that it's the top 14 finishers from the previous race that will be reversed to form the grid for race 3, which means that Kevin McGlone should have the pole position for this third and final race, which will set us up for the decider in a week's time, and a circuit that is still yet to be voted on. Well, if you're just joining us, let's remind you of what's happened so far tonight. We've had two sensational races, both of which were decided in near photo finishes. The first one in the favour of Rhys Saunders, with Chris Knox in second place. Freddie Hewitt came home in third ahead of Ryan Micklef and Michael Seal, with Dan Blake sixth. Ben Constanduris was seventh, but he'd been the tyre wall on the first lap of race 2. James Holman, Ian Crosby and Steve Hefford made it an all Division 1 top 10, with Adam Gale and Jake Conway not that far apart in the end, less than a second in it between the Division 2 winners. Third place in Division 2 was Matt Ragsdale ahead of Matt Payne. And Ben Best was fifth in class, whilst Ian Cork could only manage seventh, which means that he has lost quite a chunk of his championship lead. There you can see Ian Cork all the way down in 21st overall, 7th place in class, just ahead of Kevin McGlone, who obviously was able to bounce back from that and finish 14th in race 2, which is good enough for the race 3 pole. Let's take a look at that race 2 result then, because race 2 saw a similar look at the front of the field, but there were a few different names up there. Rhys Saunders once again features towards the sharp end, but it was James Holman who got his first win in the PDC Racing League from Freddie Hewitt, who got another solid podium finish in second. Ryan Micklef third, Rhys Saunders fourth, Steve Hefford fifth, and Dan Blake in sixth position. In Division 2, it was Jake Conway that took the victory, Martina Ward second, and Adam Gale who got the podium finishes. So we are almost ready to go into our final race of the night. Chris Knox hopefully is going to be able to get onto the grid this time. It's certainly been a trying evening for Chris Knox so far, and we're looking forward to seeing exactly what happens. Spectacular view here over the top of the Daytona International Speedway. Let's have a look then, shall we, at, well, we'll have a look in a moment, I think, at how they're going to line up for that final race. Before I do so, though, speaking of spectacular views of the racetrack, our thanks to one of Year One TV's partners, the Track Cams for Gourmets, who provide us with our camera packs, which are used on iRacing to give us these brilliant pictures of the various circuits. They're one of the best on the market, and if you are interested in broadcasting on this sort of platform, head to the website www.trackcams22.com, trackcams22.com, and you can find all the information there on how to get some of these stunning views of the tracks, and they've helped us bring you some brilliant footage of not just the PDC Racing League, but all sorts of racing in the recent past. Right then, here is the grid for the final race. It's Kevin McGlone and Matt Payne on row 1, with Chris Kipling and Morgan Short on row 2. Then it's Adam Gale and Martina Ward, Jake Conway and Ian Crosby on row 4, ahead of Steve Hefford and Dan Blake. Then Rhys Saunders, Ryan Micklef, 12th on the grid, ahead of Freddie Hewitt and James Holman, the top 2 from the previous race. Then it is Michael Seal and Carl Jacquelette, ahead of Isaac Phelps and Ian Court, down in 18th. Gavin Johnson's 19th, with Ben Constanduris rounding out the top 20, ahead of Peter Smith, Ben Best, Matt Ragsdale and Rob Graham. And then right towards the back of the grid, we have Alex Hall, Chris Knox from 26th, one to watch, Alan Toon and Paul Warren. Right then, for the final time tonight at the Daytona International Speedway, the red lights go out and we're away and racing from pole position. It's Kevin McGlone who tries to get into turn number 1 first, and he will succeed in doing so, I think, although Matt Payne on the outside line is thinking about trying to take it away from him. Already Jake Conway is moving forward in the middle of the top 10 as they hit the brakes into turn 1. Now, we've had clean starts so far, but there's a lock up there from Chris Kidman, and he takes Matt Payne wide with him. So Morgan Short, who's been a top 10 runner all day, is into second place already. Here come the Year One cars charging around the outside, but there is Morgan Short. The red number 88 car in second place is challenging for the lead as they head out of the International Horseshoe and down towards the kink for the first time. Dan Blake is in trouble, I can see. He was involved in some contact further back, and Dan Blake, unfortunately now very much, I think, is out of this championship battle. What a shame. It's been a real season to forget for the Year One driver. Let's see what happened. I just made mention of the fact that he was coming around the outside, going into the hairpin. Oh, and well, I think that's Martina Ward comes at the inside. And that is... which Yeah, another one of the year one cars. That was Mikolev, wasn't it? Ryan Mikolev, who also had contact. Now, Mikolev might have some damage as a result of that. Dan Blake definitely does, although he's carrying on at a reasonable speed. But Ryan Mikolev has dropped down to 14th place after that. Martina Ward was on the inside. There were 2 or 3 other cars all trying to occupy the same bit of track, really, which was just never going to work. So contact almost inevitable. Right, what does that left us with at the front? Well, Adam Gale is now coming back through to take the lead away from Morgan Short. That's our third different leader in just over half a lap. And Kevin McGlone is going to try and get back to the lead here before too much longer. Freddie Hewitt, the big winner here, isn't he really? He's gained 9 positions from where he started. And Freddie Hewitt, who's yet to win a race today, but he's been on the podium in both races already, is into 4th position. Chris Kidman is 5th. Steve Hefford is 6th. Ian Crosby 7th. Jake Conway is 8th. And you won't believe this, but Chris Knox from the back of the grid is 9th already, ahead of Rhys Saunders, his nearest championship rival. As I said to Chris after the previous race, I reckon Rhys Saunders is 1 or 2 points ahead of Chris in the championship now. So those 2 cars there, the number 1 Fast Star car and the number 91 Year 1 car, are the top 2 in the championship, with Freddie Hewitt only about 5 or 6 points back from them. So it's all getting really tight at the top. Ben Constantiouris has survived the first lap on cold tyres this time as well, and comes charging around the outside through the banking down into turns 1 and 2. Constantiouris on the outside line, they skate around, and Constantiouris again on cold tyres just doesn't seem very happy, does he? And nearly lost control once more going through the first corner. So Saunders back ahead of Knox, by the way, so that also happened whilst that was going on. Saunders back into 8th position, but well, Freddie Hewitt's in the lead, so Freddie Hewitt's into, we last saw him, has passed Kevin McGlone, Adam Gale and Morgan Short, and got himself into 1st position. That is Chris Knox. Chris Knox has been off at the International Horseshoe. Now, what happened there? Typically, we cut away just at the worst time, but with the wonders of modern technology, we can go back and see that he was racing with Rhys Saunders, and he just lost it. Even Chris Knox can lose it on cold tyres in these skip barbers, and just a bit too aggressive with the right foot there coming out of the International Horseshoe, and that drops him back now behind Constantiouris into 10th. It could have been worse, but he won't be too happy to see 2 Year 1 drivers in his mirrors now, Carl Jacquelette and the wounded Ryan Mikolev, who will just be trying to get through this race without any rear wing on that car. So he'll be really, really slow through the infield, but when we get out into the banking, Mikolev will be the fastest car out there, I would imagine. There is Ryan. Look, no rear wing on the back of that Skip Barber Formula 2000 car. Let's see how much he closes in on the cars in front. Well, actually, no, he's dropping back, isn't he? So there must be more damage done to the car than just the aerodynamics, because he's being overtaken now by Matt Payne, and that will put him down now into 13th place. So it's a shame for Ryan Mikolev, who had slowly been inching his way back into contention for the championship, really, hadn't he? Mikolev finished 4th in the first race, got himself 22 points, and then in the second race, Mikolev was 3rd, which was worth 25. So, yeah, he would have been about 60 points back still, but getting there, getting closer than he had been at the start of the night. This is the lead battle then. Freddie Hewitt and Morgan Short. You'd expect those two to be pretty evenly matched, certainly with the slipstream around here. Morgan Short should have the pace to stay with Freddie. What I'm really impressed with is Adam Gale, a Division 2 driver who really doesn't need to be fighting these two, but he has a chance here at getting an overall podium, and he knows that if he works with them and stays with the leaders, he could still be a contender. Steve Hefford is now up into 4th position ahead of Kevin McGlone and Chris Kidman. So those two Division 2 drivers are sort of doing what's expected of them and dropping back, but Adam Gale showing some really impressive pace here. Gale won the first race in Division 2, remember. In race number 2, he was 3rd, so he's had a good scoring night, has Adam. And he's now running 1st in class again and getting away from the rest of the Division 2 drivers, crucially. Or at least getting away from 3rd on back. Kevin McGlone is still part of this group. This is 3rd placed in Division 2, Chris Kidman, who was running, of course, in the top 2 going into the first corner, but locked up and ran wide. So we've got, realistically then, a 4-car breakaway with Kevin McGlone trying to stay with them. I suppose he just about is in that lead draft. Yeah, he's closing back in against the odds, the banking. So a top 5-car breakaway then. Kidman then at the head of this little group, and that was Rhys Saunders. Now, Rhys Saunders is starting now to go backwards, isn't he, rather than forwards. Rhys Saunders tries to pull out of the slipstream again and get back ahead of Chris Kidman. But this is not good news for Rhys, because he's 2 and a bit seconds behind that leading quintet. So, as we've seen all night long, it's very, very difficult to get to bridge the gap from one pack to the next. So, I don't know if Rhys is going to be able to get himself another good result here. A first in race 1, a fourth in race 2 is what's given him this championship lead provisionally. But might not be enough for him to get another podium in this one. We'll wait and see. Jake Conway there in front of us now, by the way. So Jake Conway goes third in class. Now, where's Ian Court? Way down again. Court just isn't getting on with this, is he? He's ninth at the moment in Division 2, so even further back than he has been previously. And this is what just happened to Carl Jacquelet, who does exactly what Ben Constantinos did in the previous... Oh, and his teeth... Oh, they're all off. They're all off at the chicane. That was Mikolev off as well, and Alex Hall, I think, was the blue car. There was a fourth car that then got collected as Jacquelet catapulted himself back onto the road on board with Jacquelet. This should be an interesting view. Pitches it into the chicane. He's too wide. He loses the rear. Ricochets off the barriers and into the road where... Oh, he's collected by another car, which I still haven't quite managed to figure out who it was, but that was a big impact, and this is where we're quite grateful that this is iRacing, not real racing, because that would have hurt, and that happened in the real world. Mikolev in the pit lane now, unsurprisingly, Ian Crosby is in the pits. Now, was it Crosby? Was it Ian Crosby then that had contact? I think it might have been, mightn't it? Rob Graham's in 2, and Jacquelet also in the pit lane. Not a huge surprise. So there is Kevin McGlone in the number 7 car, who's running in 5th position, very much staying with this leading group. Rhys Saunders still 2.2 seconds back, although he's gaining actually through this infield section. Keep an eye on Rhys Saunders in 6th. He might be able to get there after all. If he can find another second or so, he'll start to get a bit of a slipstream down the straights, and might just be enough to pull him back in. He's gained about half a second already on this lap, as Adam Gale runs very wide coming out of the final left-hander before the banking there at turn number 6, through NASCAR turn 1, back out along the far back straight they go again. Hewitt still leading then, Hefford second and Short third. And for Freddie Hewitt, this is perfect really, because although he's still got a fight on his hands for the win, it's not with championship contenders, is it? You know, Hewitt's got Hefford, Morgan, McGlone, Hefford, Short, McGlone and Gale behind him. The next championship manager really to Hewitt is Saunders in 6th and Knox in 8th, who are part of the same little group. So for now, this is looking good for Hewitt, but if Saunders and Knox can bridge this gap, which they are doing, in fact, there is, who's that up the inside? That's not Saunders, that is, Adam Gale, Gale coming back at Kevin McGlone, but look behind, because you've got Rhys Saunders, the next car in line, and then only a couple of cars further back is Chris Knox. Adam Gale is determined to get this place, isn't he? And it is for the lead of the class, I suppose, so it's well worth fighting for. They're really dropping to the top 3 now, though. And this is not really what Saunders and co want to see as they close in behind, really. Into the braking zone at turn 1. Oh, weaving around under braking. So difficult there to get into the corner. I've got to say, and I probably shouldn't say it until the end of the night, but I'm going to anyway. Given how much action there's been and how much side-by-side racing there's been, remarkably little contact. I mean, there was that little skirmish on the first lap of this race, but that was pretty much the first time we'd had contact, any significant contact anyway, at the start of a race. And typically it was Dan Blake that came off the worst, but still it was the first time we've had that sort of contact, and it's been really impressive actually, the driving standards all season, but certainly tonight, given just how fast and furious the action's been, you would have expected there to be a bit more contact. Well, there's Morgan Short. I did notice that car is just bottoming out, isn't it? I can't tell if he's got damage or if it's just that he's finding the bumpier parts of the circuit. I'm not entirely sure. You ordinarily say that's because the car's maybe running a lower ride height than some of the others around him, but I don't think that's what it is. I think he's maybe had a bit of a knock, hasn't he? Yeah, that front wing actually, the nose has been loosened, so he's running to the back of someone. It's just dragging on the ground. But these three seem content, don't they, really, to run as they are. Hewitt, Hefford and Short are well ahead of anybody else. Morgan Short in 3rd is now 1.3 seconds ahead of Adam Gale, who has now been caught by Rhys Saunders. Saunders is ahead of Kevin McGlone, and Chris Knox is coming with him as well. So we are about to see some changing behind, and in fact we see a change for the lead, because Steve Hefford, just as I said he was content to run there, gets himself into 1st place. Well, it's all going on behind though, and there's some contact. Oh no, and that's Rhys Saunders. Rhys Saunders is off the road in a big way. Kevin McGlone is off with him as well, and Adam Gale. They've all come to blows going into the chicane, and Chris Knox has come out of all of that smelling of roses. Oh no, it was the Division 2 cars in front that made contact. McGlone and Gale were fighting for the lead. Now that is McGlone, isn't it? Coming up the inside, he just clatters into the side of Adam Gale. And poor Rhys Saunders, his luck ran out there. He had nowhere to go. But unfortunately, that has ruined his race. He is not going to be able now to contend for a race win or even potentially a top 10 with the damage he's sustained there. The number 91 car limps away, rather worse for wear. He's not pitting, so he doesn't feel the need to come in and get the repairs made. He's going to carry on and just limp home, but with still just under half the race to go. Rhys Saunders, well, he's 11th overall. That is 8th place within Division 1, so 8th place points would be 14 points. If he can really wrangle something out of this, he could get back to James Holman and Michael Seal, but they're a good few seconds ahead, and at the moment he hasn't got anyone to slipstream with. He's 2 seconds behind the next nearest car, Adam Gale, who also will have damage. So that could be a real turning point in this championship for Rhys Saunders, who has had his fair share of bad luck at the start of the year, but those 3 wins in a row, the second and third races at Laguna Seca and then the first race tonight at Daytona, really made it look as though he was on course for a real championship challenge, and he still could be, because he isn't going to lose too many points to Chris Knox at this rate, but he was ahead of Chris, of course, and looking set to extend his championship lead. Well, there is Chris Knox in the Fastar car coming out of turns, or going through turns 1 and 2 of the NASCAR banking. Now, 4th place for Knox. He is 2 seconds ahead of Ben Constanduris and 2 seconds behind Morgan Short. In any other race, I'd be saying this is quite a comfortable position for Chris Knox to be in, but here at Daytona, it really isn't. You'd almost rather be in the thick of it, because at least then you've got the draft. His lap times are just going to really suffer now, I think. His previous lap was nearly a full second quicker than the race leader, despite the fact he had to drive through that accident at this part of the circuit. But this lap, without the slipstream, I doubt he's going to be quite as quick as the leading trio, who are once again back in the order of Hewitt, Hefford and Short. Hefford and Short, of course, both looking for their first ever victories in the PDC Racing League, whereas Freddie Hewitt already holds the record for most victories in the championship's history with 8 race wins. So further back here, Gavin Johnson, who's racing with some of the Division 2 drivers. Gavin started as a Division 2 driver at the start of the year, graduated back up into the top class after the first event, or actually partway through the first event at Okayama. And Gavin Johnson here then might now at this point wish he was still in Division 2, because he'd be fighting for some decent points here. Although actually these aren't even front-running Division 2 drivers. That is Ian Payne and Matthew Payne and Ian Court that he's racing with. Drives around the outside of them. The 304 is Payne, the 77 was Ian Court. Martina Ward, the next car behind them. And Rhys Saunders has just pitted. Rhys Saunders has just gone for the pit lane. So provisional championship leader in the pits. This is all very reminiscent, really, isn't it, of Chris Knox's previous race, where it all went wrong for him. It's a brief visit to the pits, so a quick repair and back out on his way. He's got a healthy car now, though, that's the thing, and he's still got about just under a third of the race to go. Can he realistically gain any more places, though? I don't think so. He's going to be about 14 seconds, I think, behind Gavin Johnson, who is the next Division 1 car. He's lost one position, essentially, by pitting. He's lost more than one position on track, but he's only lost one position within his class, which was to Johnson. So I suppose in the grand scheme of things, if it was making the car hard to drive, it might have made more sense to pit and get the damage fixed. So I'm guessing that will have been his thought process. Front, we've had another shuffle, haven't we? Look, it's completely, or almost completely reversed. It's Hefford ahead of Short and Hewitt. I wonder if Hewitt's just practicing for the final lap here. He was third going on to the banking. They're going to be 3 wide here into the chicane. And Morgan Short, sensibly there, just pulls in behind Hewitt, turns across the bows of, for Steve Hefford. That was close. And Chris Knox, Chris Knox is catching these 3. So these 3 had better get a move on. It's too late now. Knox has got the slipstream, but he's snuck up there. He's really pulled away from Constanduris by 3.7 seconds. And Chris Knox now is on the tail of the leaders. So this is crucial. Chris Knox versus Freddie Hewitt. If either one of those 2 win this race, they will take the championship lead, I reckon, to the final round in a week's time. So that is how tight it is. And Chris Knox has really, like a phoenix, risen from the ashes tonight after missing the start of race 2 because of an issue with his, I think he said it was his virtual reality system, didn't he, back at home. And that meant that he finished the first race 2 laps down and outside the points. Well, here he is now in 4th place and on the tail of the leading 3. So we've got ourselves another 4-car shootout now going into the final stages. But Chris Knox hasn't been able to spend the rest of the race racing with these three. Freddie Hewitt has spent the whole race dicing with Hefford and Short. He knows where they're strong. He knows how they're going to race him, whereas Chris Knox probably has never raced against Morgan Short, this being his first race event in the championship. He will have raced with Steve Hefford a few times. Therefore, he'll know that Steve's a pretty hard racer. So Chris Knox might be at a slight disadvantage, although he's arriving with pace. He certainly hasn't had as much time to plan his attack here for the final few laps, has he? Out through the Western Horseshoe, back up towards the banking once again. As we head now towards the closing stages of this one, it's going to be a really fascinating run to the line again between these four drivers. They're nearly, well, they're just over 4.5 seconds ahead of Constant Duras now. Jake Conway, by the way, leads Division 2 healthily, 4.5 seconds ahead of Chris Kidman, with Ian Court now running in 6th place in class as Knox makes his move for 3rd. Goes around the outside there of Morgan Short, and then he comes across the leaders who are side by side. And where does he go? He goes to the outside of both of them. Will this work? Let's hope there's no contact here. Steve Hefford throws it in, gets sideways, and Knox has gone 2nd. Well, that was the risk that I didn't think Chris Knox would want to take there. Go around the outside of a 3-wide situation, especially against a driver that he hasn't raced wheel-to-wheel with that often in the past, in the shape of Steve Hefford. Goes to the outside of Hefford again. Hewitt now gets back in the slipstream, and don't count out Morgan Short, who is probably going to get to the lead here before the time they get down to turn number 1 again. We are going to go on to the penultimate lap again. It's going to be really close this time, isn't it? We've got 2 minutes and 15 seconds. No, this might be the last lap. It is going to be touch and go, but I think this will be the last lap of racing. They cross the line with 2 minutes and 11 seconds on the clock, and the fastest lap in this race is 2 minutes 10 from Chris Knox. So if they run fastest lap pace, they might squeeze one more out of it, but it is going to be one of those races where it's 1 second either way, I think. So that in and of itself makes life really difficult for the drivers, because we've heard them saying all night, it's all about planning, it's all about tactics. Where do you want to be on the last lap? Well, that's hard enough to try and work out at the best of times, especially if you don't know when the last lap is. It could be this lap, it could be the next one. I think they'll have to work on the assumption it's this lap, and then they can always drop back again if they want to, and it turns out we're going to get another lap in. So let's assume this is the final lap, and we'll correct ourselves if that turns out to be wrong at the end. So the order is Hewitt and Knox, them 2 championship contenders that are in this group, have got themselves together. Hefford and Short just looking for their first victories here. But how involved will they get with the 2 drivers ahead? They'll know the championship situation, especially Hefford, who's been in the PDC Racing League for the whole season. Is he really going to want to mess around here with Chris Knox and Freddie Hewitt? Well, now is the time to find out. It's go time, onto the banking for the final time. Once again, 4 cars covered by just 1 second, and that gap shrinks all the time as they go down the back stretch. Chris Knox has made his move. Chris Knox has pulled out. He's passed Freddie Hewitt, but was that too soon? Is Freddie Hewitt going to be able to get back at him before they get to the start-finish line? It does take them a good 30-odd seconds to get out of this chicane and back to the line. Well, Knox has dropped back, look. Knox has dropped back. Was that deliberate? It's Hefford that got the lead. Hewitt 2nd, Knox 3rd. 3rd place is what won it for Rhys Saunders in the first race, remember. Hewitt is going to try the same thing again as he did in the previous race. He pulls out wide. He drops back. He wants to try and get the slingshot and time this run to perfection. Coming out of the final corners then. Here we go. It's the run to the start-finish line. There's less than 10 seconds left on the clock. The checkered flag will be waiting for them this time. Steve Hefford has the race lead, but Freddie Hewitt pulls to the outside, and Chris Knox is there with them as well. Knox goes up the middle. They're going to be 3 wide to the start-finish line, and 2 of these are almost tied for the championship lead. I think Chris Knox is just about going to get there. Checkered flag for Chris Knox, who wins the final race of the night. Freddie Hewitt 2nd, and it's 3rd place for Steve Hefford. 25 positions gained for Chris Knox after non-starting race 2. That is the way to kickstart your championship campaign once again. And he manages to do it with a race victory judged to perfection. He took the lead. I want to ride on board with him if we can for that final half a lap through the banking, because he took the lead going down the back straight. Well, this is the run to the line. And we'll see this first as he goes up the middle and gets to the line first. But out of the turn number... Yeah, here we go. Look, he's got the lead, and then he lets them go. That's so counterintuitive on the final lap of the race to pull off line. You're only 1.5 miles away from the finish line here, and you're deliberately giving places away to try and time it right. And then you see Freddie Hewitt here. He tries the same thing that he did in the previous race, but Chris Knox is having none of it, won't let him do it, so he pulls back down. And that there is what sealed the deal, because that gives Chris Knox a bit of a slipstream through turns 3 and 4. They're both gaining all the time on Steve Hefford, and then they're all going to arrive off turn 4 at exactly the same time. Hewitt goes high, Hefford goes low, Knox sees a gap in the middle and just about manages to squeeze through. And from there, he's done it. No one else has any momentum. He carries the speed to the line, ducks below the yellow line, and takes the race victory, his 4th victory of the season. And Chris Knox, that was a really, really important win. I think he might be a little bit happier than he was when we chatted to him after race 2, because that was a really, really well-deserved race win. Fantastic stuff. Well, we don't know exactly what the point situation is. We'll try and get an update for you if we can. If not, head over to the PDC Racing League website in the next day or so. They will, of course, be putting together a full rundown of the championship standings. For now, though, let's remind ourselves of the race result from the 3rd and final race of the night here from Daytona. It was Chris Knox who makes it 3 different winners from the 3 races tonight, and does so from right at the back of the grid. Freddie Hewitt comes second with Steve Hefford third. Morgan Short, a bit forgotten about, I think, on that final lap, but a brilliant debut in the championship that for the youngster. 4th place for him. Ben Constanduris was 5th, whilst Jake Conway gets the Division 2 victory, and that is a really important victory for him. It's not the clean sweep, remember, because Adam Gale won race 1, but 2 race wins means he's closed right back in on Ian Court. Good job, Jake. Chris Kidman is 7th and 2nd in Division 2, ahead of James Holman. Michael Steele, 8th and 9th, whilst Ben Best gets himself onto the Division 2 podium in 10th. Matt Ragsdale is 11th, ahead of Gavin Johnson. Then Ian Court, who is 13th, and that is 5th in Division 2, which I think is his best finish of the night, but still not the pace that we saw from him at Laguna Seca a week ago. Matt Payne is next, ahead of Adam Gale, Martina Ward, and then big names at the back of the field. Rhys Saunders, after a pit stop, finishes 17th. That will be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th in class, so he will score just 12 points for that. Dan Blake will get 10 points for finishing 10th in class, and Ryan Micallef 8th for finishing 11th in Division 1. Kevin McGlone was next, ahead of Alex Hall, and then Ian Crosby, Carl Jackalette, Rob Graham, Isaac Phelps, Peter Smith, Alan Toon, and Paul Warren, all non-finishers. In fact, I don't think Paul Warren got out there in any of the races tonight. That was all a bit boring, wasn't it? I mean, come on, they could have at least tried to give us some good racing tonight. Oh, no, sorry, what am I saying? That was absolutely incredible. 3 of the best races I've ever seen from, well, actually, 3 of the best races I've ever seen, full stop, but certainly from the PDC Racing League. And that is saying something, because this championship always gives us exciting racing, but they've really outdone themselves tonight. Let's have a word with our winner, shall we? Chris Knox is waiting to have a chat with us from the back of the grid to a race victory, and possibly the most important of his 4 race victories so far this season. Well, Chris, starting that deep in the field, I guess you knew that it would be possible to gain some ground around this place, but when you broke through into 5th place and the leaders were a couple of seconds up the road, did you really think you could catch them?
I had the pace on them on the infield, but as soon as they got onto the banking, it would just pull up again. So yeah, it was frustrating, but the one time they ran 3 wide into the bus stop, I knew that was it, game on.
Oh, helps if I turn the microphone on. Yeah, that was that was a pivotal moment, because it got you close enough then to get the slipstream, and then you caught them going on to the last lap, and it really was interesting to watch your tactics there, because you were attacking for the lead through the infield, you got the lead going onto the back stretch, and then you just pulled down below the yellow line and waved them on by. You do not want to be leading at that point, do you?
No, I sort of knew in my head what I was going to do, but I had to do it in such a way to catch the others out, so sort of force them to lead into the bus stop, and then it was just Freddie helped me out quite a bit there, because he could have stopped me coming through, but he went right, and obviously it was a bit of a shake and bake through the middle, and yeah, got it on the line, which I'm quite pleased with that. Obviously, it's changed around the abysmal race 2. Yeah, the guys were saying, giving me a target to see what we could get on the first lap, and a couple said 18, 12, and I think I crossed the line 10th at the end of the first lap, which I was pretty impressed with that myself, to be honest.
Yeah, I did a double take when I saw that you were inside the top 10 that early in the race, and that's key, though, because once the leaders break away, as we said, it's quite hard sometimes to catch them. It was important that you did catch them, though, because obviously you lost a lot of points in the previous race, and I know you said you weren't thinking about it, but it must have been on your mind, and with that victory, I think you are now back in front going into the final round. So that was important, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had to. I don't know, just for my own sanity, really, I needed to get a good result for that one. But yeah, thanks to the Fast-Star guys for keeping me motivated, because I was a bit annoyed with my nice and new headset, which I was wanting to throw off the wall after race 2.
It's not like technology to
I
let
know.
you down when it really counts now, is it? You're making this hard for yourself, though. I mean, Laguna Seca didn't really go to plan. What kind of a track would you like to see the final round played out at? Because it does seem that certain tracks you'll bang on it, and then tracks like Laguna maybe you struggle. So where's your vote going for next week?
I've been saying to Gavin, I quite fancy doing a dirt round, so like maybe Crandon Long would be good. The skippies go really well on dirt. No, I'm not really bothered, to be honest. Oran Park, I'd say that would be a good one to finish on.
Interesting. A very different challenge to Daytona, but certainly we should get some close racing there. We'll
Yeah.
keep our eyes peeled, see what you guys all choose. But huge congratulations anyway. It was a brilliant race, that race 3, and it puts you right back in the driver's seat for the championship.
Cool, thanks for that. See you later, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Then Chris Knox with his 4th victory of the year. Now, Freddie Hewitt, for the 2nd race in a row, went into the final couple of corners in 2nd place, but it looked as though this time around his tactics didn't quite work. Freddie, I saw you pull high again, going through turns 3 and 4 of the banking. Were you trying to do the same thing you did in race 2?
Yeah, sort of. Didn't want to be first until after the banking, really. But I was also thinking of Chris behind. I know he wanted the win a bit more than me. I was quite happy to settle for a podium. 2nd would have been better than, was better than 3rd. And I just wanted to make sure I was in front of Steve more than anything, rather than Chris. I know we're fighting in the championship, but I wasn't going to take the risk if he wanted it that bad.
That's really interesting then, because as you correctly say, you and Chris are pretty much tied together on points now. There's very little in it. So to have that presence of mind in the heat of battle like that, to think, right, I'm not really racing you, and you're probably going to take more risks than certain other drivers. I mean, it must be a overload on the brain as you're running to the line at 100 miles an hour and you're making all these calculations that could prove so important for the championship.
Yeah, any other track would be a bit like that, but because you've got so much straights around here, and until someone gets near you, you haven't really got to worry. So you can sit back and just think, who's near me, what have I got to do, and who's coming up behind me. And that was all I'd sort of done, really. Every straight was just look at my delta, see where Chris was, see where all my other championship rivals were, which I heard they had a bit of a disaster one. So it was just get my head down, try and stay in the lead, stay out of trouble, and get to the end of the race, and then think about the championship when it came to them final laps.
Well, the final laps were pretty intense. I think the final 3 races in a week's time are going to be even more intense. I just asked Chris where his vote would be going for the final track. He went for quite a tight technical little circuit in Oran Park. What about you? What sort of circuit would you like this to all be settled at?
I'd have loved to have said Donington, but because it's a track I've always done well at in a skippy. But I think I'll join him at Oran if that takes my vote and if that's eligible.
Interesting. Okay, I'd vote for Donington because it always produces good racing. But
I would too. But I don't think it's eligible because it's a track you have to buy, which is a bit of a shame. But which I'm not very happy about. I'd love to go back to Donington because we've had some amazing races there in the past. But we'll see. Try and pull on Gavin's tail a little bit and see if he'll let us use it.
Well, wherever it is, I'm sure it's going to be another one of those really tight championship battles. I'm going to go and buy myself a handful of calculators, I think, to try and keep on top of it all. It's going to be good fun, as was tonight, Freddie. Well done on the 3 podium finishes, one of the most consistent nights of anyone.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you once again to my sponsors and all the guys at the team working really hard to get us out on track.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Freddie. So Freddie Hewitt then, 2nd place in both races 2 and 3. He was 3rd in race 1 as well. Really solid night for Freddie Hewitt. Right then, I usually at this point would sum up what we've seen over the last couple of hours. I would be here all night if I were to try and do that right now. Suffice to say, we've had 3 sensational races, all of which boil down to the final couple of 100 feet of these 20-minute races. The Daytona International Speedway Road Course has been a brilliant host venue for our penultimate night of racing in the PDC Racing League. It all boils down then to a three-way championship fight between Chris Knox, Freddie Hewitt and Rhys Saunders going into the final 3 races in a week's time. Division 2 is tight as well. Jake Conway is now really breathing down the neck of Ian Court. And I reckon that in the Teams Championship, that's not all sewed up just yet either. There are plenty of reasons to join us here on Year One TV in a week's time for the final 3 races of the PDC Racing League. My thanks to Graham Sessford at Year One for all of his hard work on the production. Thanks to Gavin Johnson as well, and everyone at PDC. I know that they are always really grateful to all of their sponsors as well for all of their effort they put into not only sponsoring this, but also their real world racing. Do head over to the PDC website for all of the information on the iRacing League and on their real world racing exploits. There's an awful lot to be excited about going into the new season, so give them a check online and on social media. Right, there's a nice cold drink waiting for me somewhere. I'm going to go and have a much needed rest after what's been a fantastic night of entertainment here at Daytona. We'll see you again for the championship decider, same time, same place next week.